Today we're traveling across Australia to visit 4 remarkable homes, each with its own story to tell. First, we journey to the countryside of Orange, where a historic 1877 Georgian estate has been thoughtfully restored into a refined retreat that balances timeless English charm with modern warmth. In Melbourne, a lovingly renovated 1930s Tudor celebrates family, layering playful pops of pink and treasured heirlooms into every corner. Next, we visit a serene Victorian terrace that combines modern simplicity with vintage soul, where natural light and an effortless indoor-outdoor flow create a home deeply connected to nature. And finally, an Edwardian treasure is reimagined with contemporary grace, blending heritage details with curated pieces, both collected and created, that make the space as personal as it is timeless. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Steve Cordoni and I'm excited to show you around a couple of my favourite spaces at my country house in Australia, so come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hey guys, my name's Steve Cordoni and I'm interior stylist from Sydney, Australia, and welcome to my country home. Rosedale Farm was a pipe dream. It was 3.5 years in the finding. We searched all around Australia to find a country house, and we came upon a whim to see Rosedale 8 years ago, and it was just love at first sight. And I think everyone always says, you know, the right place will come up when the time is right, and it was like the house found us. So it's 1877 Georgian manor house, and it had great bones, it had beautiful high ceilings, beautiful grounds. We're on 120 acres in Orange, which is about 3.5 hours northwest of Sydney, and a great town with wineries and beautiful restaurants, and so it just became this great place to call, you know, this our country house. We spent 8 years renovating. We went room by room. We did the garden. There's about 30,000 plants and trees that we planted, and we redid every single room from the ground up and rewired and replumbed. But it was, yeah, a really beautiful home that had a lot of heritage in the area, and we wanted to do it justice and bring it back to life. You always have that storybook kind of fairy tale country house in your mind, and we definitely did when we were searching for it. And I think when we drove up, it was just that perfect kind of storybook fairy tale home at the base of a hill, which we knew instantly we could do something with. So welcome to the living room. This is probably one of my favorite spaces in the house. It was originally 2 rooms. This was the formal lounge room, and it was the morning room. And we opened up this wall here to make one big sort of grand lounge space. It has such great light, and I think I just wanted to like really play on that. And so with these 3.6 meter ceiling heights, I wanted to give the walls a bit of texture and a bit of layering. And so we did all this beautiful French paneling, which I love. But then again, to sort of play with that old and new, I painted everything out in this almost a gallery white, which is Popcorn by Porter's Paints. And again, it just gives this sort of clean, crisp layer, but there's so many details with all the detailing, and then you can start to add all these different details and textures and materials with all the other elements that I brought in. So I think once I had the layout of the space, I really wanted to work with a really giant rug to kind of, you know, demarcate this space and I guess kind of join the 2 areas. And so for me, it was all about texture and natural earthy materials, and that's what I love about styling homes and designing homes, is that they should always be living. So I've got lots of different materials in here that are quite sort of earthy and quite natural, and so I really wanted to use this Abaca jute for the rug. So it's a 9 by 3 meter rug. which is quite big, but it really connects both spaces, which I love. And so we've got this sort of more sort of TV lounging space, and then down here, sit by the fire, play games, relax and chill. But because we have this rug, which kind of connects both spaces, it kind of feels like it feels warm, connected and harmonious within the context of these four walls. I think for me, the feeling that I wanted within this space was it to feel super, super cozy. There's not that much artwork on the walls because there's these beautiful Australian cedar windows, which I think once I had this sort of crisp background of the white walls, they kind of almost looked at their own frames, and then they have these beautiful vistas outside to the garden, and it just feels quite beautiful and ethereal when you walk through. And so I wanted to kind of introduce the color palette that you can see beyond the windows inside. And so I think I really started with this really beautiful Schumacher fabric, and that was the basis of the color palette and I guess the tones of the overall space. So once I had that color palette, I guess I started to mood board that up, but then I kind of wanted to play with the layout of the space. And for me, it was about sort of introducing this beautiful central table. And I love that because there's two entrances now because we opened up this space. So you walk through, and I wanted to have this sort of beautiful round drop gate leg table, which again, beautiful antique piece that I found at an auction. And for me, it just allows me to add so many different styling elements to the table. There's, things, this beautiful tray that I got in Italy. There's all my beautiful selection of books. There's this gorgeous little bamboo bowl that I got from India, and a beautiful sort of paper mache bowl there, and I always have fresh flowers. And so it is almost like this sort of landing point, and you can go either way to the lounge space or to this sort of more chilled, relaxed space. For me, keeping this space very relaxed, playing with the proportions of the furniture in here was really important. I wanted these armchairs to be big and yum and comfy, so you could sit by the fire, look out the window, play games, have a glass of wine, and do all the things that you want to do at the end of the day, but feel sort of really enveloped by the space. Even though this is quite grand, this space, it still feels quite intimate, and I think really working with the layout of furniture and making sure that things are at the right height and chairs are turned into each other, and make sure that practically they're working to feel kind of cozy and to feel quite connected to not only other pieces of furniture but to the people that are using the space was really important. And then I think, again, talking about all the textures and materials, when I look at the space, there's a lot going on, but really when I think about the color palette, because it is sort of that monochromatic, I guess, color palette, working with that beautiful fabric that I started with, I see lots of different materials. There's beautiful linen on the sofa. There's some gorgeous velvet cushions. There is the rattan of these beautiful floor lamps. There's the gilt of the mirror. Then there's these beautiful 18th century Italianate gilt chandeliers, and then there's my vintage Louis Vuitton trunk and some beautiful the dark antique of the table, and then there's marble. And so there's so many different materials and textures within this one space, but it all kind of works because I haven't got so many different colors. And for me, that is the most probably magic part of this room, but also a magic part of when you're layering and you're curating a home. And that's what I love about creating something that feels harmonious, but also works within the confines of the space. So this sort of more lounge space, this was probably the first room that I walked into as I walked in the front door. And again, the first thing that I loved was this beautiful sort of bay window door situation. And it was a tricky one because I didn't know if the dark wood was too dark, was it too red, was it too orange? But now I think once we painted everything around it crisp white, now I look at that and it's almost like this beautiful sort of artwork and a frame out to the front pond and the garden beyond. And so I'm glad that we kept that, and it's, there's so much detail within it, which I love, and it just creates this beautiful connection between inside and outside. The other thing that I really love is these beautiful sort of wide cornices, and I think that's very much pivotal to that kind of 1877 Georgian style, and we've kind of introduced a lot more of that throughout the house. And for me, again, really about these proportions and these beautiful windows and these beautiful cedar wood, it really kind of tells a story and creates almost like frames and paintings towards the garden. And then everything inside, I've kind of tried to create this beautiful symbiosis between the beautiful architectural details and then some of the furniture. So darker type timber with these beautiful Louis style armchairs that I had recovered. So again, playing with that sort of old meets new, but everything tells the same sort of story. So this is one of 7 fireplaces in the house, and it's the original. We don't use this as much, but because now we've got air conditioning, thank Lord. But also there's a beautiful wood combustion one down here, which again really kind of heats the space. But I just love them. I think again it creates a beautiful focal point. And then I was lucky enough to find these 2 very hard to find matching mantle mirrors at an auction, and they just again reflect the light. They kind of mirror what's going on outside and creates this sort of special drama within the room. I guess the approach for this particular country house was a bit tricky because there's 19 rooms and there was, the gardens and the interior and it started off as, very much let's just paint inside, outside, let's redo the bathrooms, redo the kitchen, and then we'll be done. And I think as soon as we sort of started unpacking all of the layers, we realized that we really wanted to do everything from the ground up and almost had to because there was a few issues that we found along the way. And I think for me as the designer of this particular property, I definitely wanted to be sympathetic to the heritage of the actual architecture and I guess the heritage of the house, but I definitely wanted to fuse my style. And so projects that I do sort of city, based in Sydney and around different areas, I guess were a bit sort of harder edged, and I knew that I wanted to make this a bit softer and a bit more conducive to this sort of country lifestyle and country feel, I guess. And so I definitely leaned into that English country manor, countryside kind of style, but really kind of wanted to think about how to start this project. And so there was so many different rooms and I didn't know where to start. And so this is what I always talk about in my masterclass is it's that, really start with a mood board. And so I went room by room and I started with the office for some reason. I think it was probably the clearest idea of what I wanted that space to be. But then I went room by room, the bathroom, the kitchen, the dining room, and all the bedrooms, and I created an individual mood board for each of those spaces. I knew that this space, the renovation wouldn't be short. I knew that it would kind of be, ongoing. Probably not as long as 6 years, but c'est la vie, here we are. But I definitely wanted to have those visual moments on paper so I could see what those spaces would look like. And given that it was such a long renovation, seeing lots of different things as a stylist and a designer and creative director, I see so many things on a daily basis, for work and also play in the digital sphere that we live in. And so it's easy to get blown off course of like, oh, do I want that look now? Or do I want this look? And so I definitely came back to that sort of style blueprint and those mood boards and just worked room by room individually because it was a long process, but all throughout the whole renovation journey, I wanted to make sure that the overall story was told and it was harmonious and it felt like everything worked from one room to the next. The vision for me was definitely this sort of classic English side manor house, but fused with this contemporary overlay. And I think in general, every project that I work on, that's generally my style sort of mood board and my style DNA. But I definitely wanted to kind of keep I guess that kind of classicism within the paneling that we put in and really take on with some beautiful antiques and vintage pieces that we brought in. But I wanted to feel quite contemporary and quite conducive to our lifestyle. It was very different how they sort of lived in 1877 and beyond to now. And so, we wanted to open up some spaces and some rooms to make it a bit more open plan living, but still keep the coziness. So I think it was definitely all about balance and getting that idea of classic meets modern, old meets new, and really playing with that contrasted duality. And that's my style in general. Any project that I do, I always want to have a nod to the past, but firmly sort of looking at the future. And definitely a neutral monochromatic color scheme. That was probably one of the most important things to be able to kind of get that balance of old and new. So this is the main dining room, formal dining room, I should say. And this was definitely a sort of dream space and wallpaper that I saw many, many years ago. I stored it away in my inspiration file, and I knew that I wanted to use it somewhere where it would have drama and impact. For me, it kind of reminds me of the garden that we're surrounded by, the house. It's definitely more tropical and sort of fantastical, but it really is this sort of convivial space that always starts a conversation. And for me, this Excel, it's by Excel, which is a London brand, and it's this incredible sort of, I guess, wallpaper that has this beautiful texture through it, and it's almost been inspired by these 17th and 18th century wall tapestries. And so for me, it just kind of gives this incredible story of what's beyond. But I've had so many people that have come into this space, whether they are into design or not, or nieces or nephews, young people, old people, and it just blows them away because it takes you to somewhere else. And I think that's what homes should do. They should sort of transport you to a different space and a different time. And so the starting point really was this wallpaper. It's called D-Dream, and it is a dream. It kind of feels fantastical, it feels ethereal, there's monkeys, there's birds. And so essentially what I wanted to do was, again, I guess in my own little way, give it more of a contemporary spin. And so I think adding this beautiful sort of chair rail at 90 centimeters high, painting that again crisp white, just gives it this beautiful kind of juxtaposition between the beautiful moody tone of the wallpaper. And then I kind of just wanted to play on that. And so bring in, again, more contemporary pieces, but that sort of old meets new. The case in point is this beautiful armoire that I found at an auction. And again, the scale was perfect. I love these beautiful brass sort of hinges and hardware, but it was in this sort of brown, a bit sort of slightly orange brown timber. And so what I did was have my carpenter sort of ebonize it and turn it into this beautiful tall black cabinet. And again, all the detail for me when something is painted quite flat, just it brings it out and tells a story. And so that sort of looks, you know, really quite tall and quite imposing. But again, this juxtaposition between something that's a bit more fun and classic and fantastical, something that's a bit more hard-edged, it kind of has that really nice sort of duality. And so for me, they're the sort of main elements that I really wanted to play with within the dining room. And then again, another chandelier, because I think you always need a chandelier in a country home. And this was something that I searched for, I don't know, I want to say 2 years for, until I found the exact right thing. So I found this in a beautiful antique store, Graham Geddes in Melbourne. And it's this incredible sort of 18th century Italian style chandelier. And again, I think the idea of having these beautiful crystals, which is quite classic and antique, mixed in with lots of these different other elements, you know, super contemporary chairs. It just has that mix and that sort of meld, but because everything is in, you know, a really harmonious color palette, it seems to sort of work. And so they're those main elements that I love in this space. And I think, you know, we've had so many parties here, we've had events, we've had weddings, and the overall mood of this space, yes, visually it looks great and it's sort of imposing, but the mood that this space gives off is really soulful and really special. It feels warm, it feels cozy, and I definitely think that's, you know, thanks to this beautiful wallpaper that wraps around you and wraps around everyone who seems to kind of sit down to share a meal at the table. So this is the dining room, and I promise there's only one of my other favorite spaces. There's three. This one actually leads into the kitchen, which I'll take you through to now. So welcome to the kitchen. This is one of the spaces I think generally everyone seems to kind of conjure around the kitchen. And the starting point for the design was really about three key pieces. It was the floor, the chevron reclaimed oak, which we found it came from France. This beautiful sort of Ralph Lauren billiard pendant, and then the beautiful marble, Arabescato Vagli marble. They were the three elements that I think, thinking of my dream kitchen, they were really at the top of my mood board. And so building the space around those was super important. And I guess for me, it was about creating that kind of classic English style kitchen, but also giving it that contemporary edge. And I think painting the beautiful shaker style cabinetry in this sort of, it's almost charcoal meets sort of khaki green. And what I love about it is that it kind of changes colors throughout the day. So in different lights, it looks slightly more green. Sometimes in the afternoon when there's a bit more warmth in the sun outside, it sort of feels a bit more blue. And then when it's a bit more sort of gray, it feels more charcoal. And so for me, that sort of contemporary element and the idea that it kind of, each space, every time you walk in, it feels different. It feels like a different color. I think that for me is like the most important thing and sort of the fun thing about having a home and creating a home. And so that was sort of, it's a beautiful color called Black Cockatoo by Porter's. And it just moves throughout the day. And I think that's really fun and really playful element within the kitchen. For me, walking into this space, it was half the size, essentially, because it was, a very classic old kitchen. There was an old bathroom in this side, there was a sort of walk-in pantry on this side, and the kitchen was about half of this space. It had a lino floor, it had a very sort of simple basic kitchen that was done in the 70s, and so even though it wasn't my aesthetic at all, and we completely changed it, I did not want to kind of lose that sort of intimacy and that sort of warmth of those classic English country kitchens. So for me, it was about, looking at the space, how we were going to do the layout. And there were so many elements and so many ways that I could have done this kitchen. I could have made a big, beautiful, long island bench, but I decided to kind of keep it more informal and base it around this beautiful sort of old classic Essie stove that we have. And so I wanted to keep that. I wanted to make the cabinetry feel like it was more sort of not inbuilt. It was, floating pieces of furniture, and then build the story around that. And so having this sort of wide, but, quite packed, quite small kitchen bench was important because I always feel like people gather around it, and it just felt quite intimate, and so I didn't want it to feel too daunting. But because, it's a contemporary world, there's a lot of things that we need to house, I made sure that we have lots of beautiful cabinetry. And so throughout all of this cabinetry, we use these pocket doors, which you sort of open up, and this is one of the beautiful little storage units that we have. And so we've got the toaster and the kettle and the coffee machine in there. And then the next one is just more of the pantry, which is not looking the best at the moment. But all these little things, storage, the way that we can kind of like hide things, but also, it's conducive to our life because there's a lot of things that we need on a day-to-day basis. So it doesn't feel sort of too imposing within the space of the kitchen. And so all those practical elements, I think for me, were really important, but as well as the visual storytelling. And I think a lot of the things that I see when I'm styling or designing kitchens, I want there to be that really nice balance of practical, but also really aesthetic. And I think that's why I have lots of artwork in the kitchen. I've got these beautiful styling elements and little vignettes that I've created on the bench tops, just like I would on a coffee table or a bedside table or a hallway console. And so I keep that sort of same aesthetic and styling, idea in the confines of the kitchen, but I make sure that they're practical. So where I've got, interesting little things like this beautiful salt holder that I got in Italy. It's a beautiful piece that's also practical. There's my salt, but it also looks great on the kitchen bench. And so using little vases to house parsley and herbs and things like that. Those little styling tips for me, that's sort of the most exciting thing about playing with that, really utilitarian idea of what a kitchen should be, but making it sort of really visually beautiful and aesthetic with pieces that are around you that you just love and that feel good. One of the things that I loved about the original kitchen was this old English Essie stove and oven, and it's powered by wood, and so it is so beautiful to cook on. We don't use it all the time because the fire makes a bit of a mess. We've got the new bank of ovens over here. For me, I really wanted to build, this sort of back end of the kitchen around this beautiful oven. And we updated the tiles around the back with these beautiful deep green Zellige tiles, which again, kind of work with the color of the cabinetry. And for me, it just, again, it kind of mixes in that old meets new sort of element. And again, I love cooking. It's very rare that I get to cook and host so much now because I'm always traveling a lot. But for me, entertaining at home and building a space and designing a space around the idea of entertaining is super important. For me, I love tablescaping, but I think whenever I'm entertaining, I always want to think about one idea. And so that could be, a story that you want to tell, it could be the occasion, it could be inspired by a movie that you've seen or a restaurant that you've just visited in Italy or, France. And so building the story around that is always a really simple way to start, creating something, even if it's something informal for your family, for friends, thinking about ideas that you can take to create something magical so they can share a beautiful meal around the table is important for me. And again, I love to think about what flowers I'm using. I tend to use a lot of fruit and vegetables within my tablescaping. I've got lots of leftover parsley here from an event that I just did last weekend, and using things that are, do feel quite utilitarian and do feel quite, especially being on the farm, I went to the veggie garden and I grabbed lots of beautiful pumpkins and chard and rhubarb and parsley and put it all together to create this sort of very harvested look, which suited what I was doing in terms of the concept. And I think also thinking about where the food is situated. I love to just cook big things that are very simple, throw them in the oven, and then so this bench is usually used for, a buffet style, eatery. And so I kind of put all my big, beautiful vintage chopping boards out there and just, let people come up and enjoy it. And it just feels like so much more personal because you're at someone's home. All those little styling details, as long as they go back to the concept and the theme that you're trying to create, make something that's seemingly an informal Sunday family dinner super special. So the next space that I want to show you is take you upstairs to the primary bedroom and bathroom. So I studied interior design at a design college in Sydney, and I got affiliated with Belle magazine, which was a runner-up in the Belle Young Interior Designer of the Year. I did not win, but that's okay. I'm not bitter about it at all. But it was the first foray into sort of magazine land, and I think I always knew that I loved obviously interior design and doing all that hard design stuff. But for me, it was really about the styling elements and creating those moments within a home or within a photo shoot, and creating and telling a story. And so for me, working in magazines for 6 years, various different editorial titles and their advertising, and then I started working with events and creating these, basically telling stories for magazines, for private weddings and events. And so I think for me, growing through that sort of process and I think definitely honing my skills as an editorial stylist led to sort of what I'm doing now, which is, building a business and doing products and sort of, working with global brands locally, overseas, and hosting events and sharing as much of the knowledge that I've learned over the 18 years of my career with as many people as I can. And so, yeah, it's been a fun journey, but, I think really starting with creating the best and telling the best story that I can through that magazine lens has sort of led me to where I am now. My mum was an interior decorator and my father was a builder, and so I was always around renovating and colours and samples but then also seeing the actual incarnation of these houses that Dad was building. And so definitely growing up with Mum and Dad doing that, you're working side by side a lot of the time, definitely led me into this sort of space. But I think growing up, I was very heavily influenced by performing arts, and I did lots of drama and music and dance and all those sort of performing arts sort of genres. And then I think just growing and I got to sort of high school and I started sort of thinking about more of the creative arts. And for me, I guess when I look at my early editorial work, and even now to a degree with the events and beautiful campaigns that I produce with different brands, there is always an element of theatre and theatrics. And so for me, I think it was moving into the creative arts really kind of told the story and kind of I got to hone a bit of the love for performing, but also within this sort of creative realm, which it touched on all of those different things. So this is the primary bedroom, which funnily enough was actually originally 3 rooms that we opened up to create one sort of more generous space, and then we added an ensuite through here. The thing that I love about this space was that originally it was the nursery. So it was where they used to have kids, and the teachers, the previous owners that were here before us were teachers, and they would actually take classes here and give classes to kids from local schools. And so it sort of has like quite a nice feeling. And the thing that I love the most about it is that it has windows on both sides, and so the light is beautiful all throughout the day. And I knew that I wanted this space to feel very kind of warm, very cozy, and stick to that beautiful sort of navy blue and tones of blue, because when you look outside, you see the beautiful blue of the lake, you see the beautiful sky, and it is so bathed in light. And so for me, this space was a really generous space to be able to work with. And so I wanted to create little breakout spaces within the context of, hero in the bed, but then having this little kind of nook in the corner, which is bound by this Kentia palm, so you feel like you're somewhere, being fanned by this beautiful plant, and then having another little nook over on this side with this beautiful vintage leather chair that I had reupholstered, and just little breakout spaces, because I think for me in the bedroom, it should feel quite warm and enveloping and feel like a place that you can go, and not just to sleep, but also to relax and to unwind. And so having little breakout spaces when you do have a generous space to be able to kind of work within those confines is really magic, and feels like, it creates that sense of warmth and coziness. The idea of keeping, I guess, this really neutral palette with the beautiful jute of the carpet, and then the beautiful linen of the bedhead, and these sort of simple details with this leather of this Ralph Lauren pendant, was really sort of the background to be able to overlay a beautiful tone of blue. And I saw this, again, another Schumacher fabric, which is this chinoiserie, and I saw this beautiful fabric at a fabric house when I was sort of wandering around, and I just thought, it's such a beautiful color and such a beautiful pattern that it almost reminds me of sort of little pockets when I look out the window. And so for me, adding these little Roman blinds to this space rather than doing tall sort of long drapes made it feel more contemporary, but again, kept it quite like it was telling a story. Each little sort of section tells a little story. And I think, again, overall, within the overall space of the house, that's really what I wanted every room to do. Introducing different textures and materials like this beautiful leather, and then the brass detail of the cabinetry, and then the leather and the brass of the beautiful pendant. These vintage trunks we found at an auction, which are great. I love the mix of brass and leather. And for me, again, all these little textures, they feel quite neutral, but when you see them within the context of a room, all of those layers build on top of each other to create this space that feels, one-dimensional when you walk in, but then you start to unpack all the different layers, and then you see all these new pockets, and it starts to unravel. And I think that's the magic of creating an interior, is you should walk into a space, instantly be hit by, the beautiful overarching theme of that room, but then as you kind of get deeper and deeper into that space, start to unpack its layers and see all the little details that surround it. So from here, this primary bedroom leads into the primary bathroom, which is a little bit like a hotel space, and I want to show you that now because it's probably the space that I spend a lot of time in, bathing, sitting in the bath, which makes me feel very relaxed at the end of the day. So the starting point for this bathroom was really about, I had just come back from France, and it was an amazing sort of hotel that I'd stayed at that had this really generous marble bathroom. And whenever I'm styling any bathroom, I always wanted to make it feel like a beautiful 5-star hotel. It was actually really nice that we had these proportions to play with. There was this sort of raised platform, which we didn't really need to keep, but I'm glad we did, because we've kind of created this wet zone with the marble, and we've got the shower and the toilet and then the bath in the middle. And it just created this sense of sort of theatre, again, like elevating it, creating a stage almost for this beautiful marble tub. And for me, it's just, again, really all about that mix of old and new. So we've got this beautiful sort of wall that we've done here with the paneling again, and then the bath sits in front of that. The only thing that I didn't get in this bathroom was I wanted to really put a fireplace behind here, but unfortunately it just wasn't practically, we weren't able to do it. So, you know, we went with the paneling, and I think it still works in the context of having, you know, a bit of a focal point in this space. And you know, this is one of my favorite little portrait paintings that I found at an auction locally. And it just sits there, and I think all these little styling elements work to make it feel quite glamorous. But again, always playing with that old and new. And so I knew that on my mood board was lots of black steel frame windows and doors. And so particularly in this space, we had them done. And again, it creates this sort of beautiful symmetry within the space, but also this sort of harder edged, which contrasts with everything going on, especially these beautiful antique mirrors that I found at a store in Sydney. And again, all these little details like the gilt mixes into the brass, and then the bronze, and then the beautiful marble. So all these different textural elements and material elements match to kind of feel quite special and quite luxe. But then again, similarly to when I'm styling the kitchen and thinking about those more practical spaces, I try to kind of, you know, change that trend and turn it on its head a little bit to kind of bring in lots of decorative elements. And so even when I'm thinking about all the styling elements that I'm bringing in, I'm thinking about details and how they look within the space. And so I've got this little beautiful little table here that was once in the lounge room, but I brought it up to be this little pedestal table that has some bath salts and a beautiful candle, thinking about monogram details on the towel, all these little elements that we can, you know, make ourselves feel special on the daily. I think for me, having those little special elements that make you feel, you know, enveloped and make you feel like your everyday moments and everyday rituals feel quite elevated. I think that for me is really important about creating a space and creating home, and definitely a really good way to do that within the confines of a bathroom. It's where I do a lot of my creative thinking and creative work. And so I think, you know, thinking about those spaces and how we can kind of really hone that creativity. I usually change this artwork out for a mirror or different artwork, and I'm always constantly changing the vase and the style of flowers that I'm doing. But even having, you know, curtains in the bathroom, I think is quite wild. But we did this beautiful wax cotton. And again, it's all about adding that drama and that sense of theatre, but things that make you think, things that make you feel good, things that make my mind feel more creative. And in the confines of this space, which again is quite generous as a primary bathroom, you can do it. But you can also bring those little tips and those little elements like I talked about with the monogramming and the choice of flowers and the beautiful little amenities that you can bring in even to a smaller space. And so for me, yes, this is definitely one of my favorites. I usually have the candle on, the bath going, I look outside to the beautiful lake beyond, and it's a place to relax, unwind at the end of the day, and it makes me very, very happy. So the last space that I want to show you on the inside of the house is my office, which is the first room that I renovated at the start of this renovation. So I'm going to take you back downstairs into the library/office. So this is the office space, which funnily enough was the very first space that I decided to renovate. I don't know why, because it's probably the room that I used the least. But I think when you have a clear idea in your mind of what you want a space to be, you kind of just tend to go with that. And I'm glad I did start with this space because it kind of informed a lot of the other spaces beyond and the other areas of the house. And so I had this inspiration and this idea that it would be a very sort of Ralph Lauren inspired study, office, library space. And I definitely wanted to kind of play on that idea of a beautiful sort of navy, indigo blue space. And so the hallmarks and those, I guess, three key elements were this beautiful grass cloth wallpaper. And this is one of my favorite things. It's a chevron sort of pattern, but again, because these rooms are quite generous and quite tall in terms of the ceiling heights, but sometimes can feel a bit cool. And so what I wanted to do was warm them up and give everything a bit more of a texture. And so I love this idea of this grass cloth wallpaper by Philip Jeffries. And it really kind of informed this color palette, but also gave the idea of this pattern for the eye to kind of like draw your eye upwards with this chevron. From there, what I wanted to do was have a really beautiful chandelier. Again, something that I guess was very classic Ralph Lauren, and it has leather and brass detail. And for me, those sort of two elements in terms of materiality and a texture are really important. And I love that it kind of has this, I guess, classic look, but a sense of modernity because of the materials. Then my third element that I just absolutely loved and fell in love with when I was sort of at a rug store, Cadbury's in Sydney, was this beautiful antique Chinese Peking rug. And again, I just saw the colors, I saw the pattern, and I just knew that it would just feel so glamorous in this office space. And again, the color of, and the tonality of this rug started to inform everything else going on within the space. And so I had my very dear friend Morgan from Symbol Studio, who does all of my window coverings, come up with these beautiful velvet blue fabric drapes, and I just think they're my favorite thing in this room. And again, the idea of these textural elements that just feels good, even if you're not physically touching them, you can see that it feels sort of warm and plush and lush. And again, taking them right up almost just under the cornice creates this sort of sense of drama and draws the eye upwards. And it just feels super glam, super luxe, but also really warm and really inviting. There's so many different elements that I love within this space, and I think, again, a house should always tell the story of where you've been and, you know, where you've been on your travels and things that have been handed down. And so I like to be surrounded when I'm being creative in this space and working. It's very tidy here. It's not usually this tidy. There's usually samples everywhere. There is books, there is things on the floor, on the wall, pinned up. But I definitely want to be surrounded by things that, you know, remind me of a time and place and remind me of things and tell stories. And so all these different elements, whether it's this little chapati wrap that I got in India, or this beautiful Chinese urn, or this, you know, one of my favorite candles, and, you know, pictures, and these beautiful hand-blown glass paperweights that I made in the Maldives, just different things that kind of give you little sort of snippets of a time and place. For me, work again anywhere in the house, but particularly in the office, because you're constantly surrounded by it, and it just reminds you when you are working and you're stressed and you're kind of trying to come up with an idea, it's nice to just look away for a minute, be surrounded by things that sort of fill your heart with, you know, a sense of personality and a sense of joy, and to kind of get you through to that sort of next project. And so for me, this space feels, I guess, like that kind of initial look that I kind of set out for it to be, but it also feels like it's very much me and feels connected to this space. Again, you can see out through the window, but it feels like a creative space, a space that I do a lot of working, I create. Sometimes I even come and just sit on the armchairs opposite the desk and just sort of, you know, relax in here. And so all those different elements, there's a lot that goes on in this room, but I love that it feels harmonious. It feels like it's quite warm, quite enveloping, and so personal to this particular space and to my story. So that is everything for the inside, but I want to show you one. I'm not going to show you the whole garden because it is 120 acres on the land, but I want to show you one of my favorite spaces, which is the very last place that we sort of renovated. We added a pool and these sort of Italianate gardens, which was really the missing link to everything that we sort of did within the property. And now that it's done, it just feels like the whole space is complete. So I want to show you that to finish the tour. I think the feeling that I want people, as soon as they walk in the front door of my home, to feel is at ease and to feel super welcomed. That's the initial thing that I want them to feel in the hall, in the foyer. And I do that through various things with, you know, a beautiful home scent. There's always fresh flowers, and there's lots of beautiful warm textures that sort of evoke, I guess, this intangibility of feeling surrounded and connected. But I think even more so than that, I want the home to really tell a story of me and my journey and my story and where I've been, and so have, you know, beautiful personal knickknacks and styling objets from my travels and things that have been handed down. And so instantly when people walk through the door, I want them to get my story, my journey, but also feel like they are so welcomed, like they could be at their own home. So Bedford and Ren and I want to show you the last space that we renovated. We finished this 2 years ago, and it really kind of completed not only the garden, but the overall sort of grand scheme and grand renovation of the overall property, which is the pool area, which is definitely inspired by Italian gardens and that sort of big, beautiful scenery and vista out to the countryside below. Yes, the guys are trying to get on the action. But yes, this is our pool area where we spend a lot of time in summer. Not so much now because it is the dead of winter. The old orangery, which is an old hay shed, and we've turned it into a really beautiful, I guess, entertaining space, which we love to sort of share meals and dinners and lunches, and we've hosted events and things. And so it is this quite a big space for a pool area, but we had so many references of these beautiful pools in the middle of a good grassy knoll. And this is one of the spaces on the property that has a beautiful vista to the countryside beyond. There's a lot of trees around the house, but here you feel like you are definitely elevated. You feel like you kind of see the beautiful countryside, the rolling hills, and it feels like you could be anywhere. You know, it was definitely inspired by, you know, a beautiful Tuscan farmhouse or villa. And so we've got lots of different plants that sort of replicate that within the garden. So we found these beautiful sort of 15-year-old olive trees, and we planted an olive grove down below. We've got lots of carpet roses. We've got beautiful peach trees, which are now dormant because it's winter, but they're really stunning. We've got lots of rosemary, and then over in the orangery, we've got lots of beautiful terracotta pots filled with citrus and lemons and mandarins and oranges, and all of those sort of, I guess, not only beautiful visual plants, but all those sensorial elements that make it feel like we're somewhere else. And so we've got big, beautiful spaces here where we usually host lunches out on the grass, but also a great entertaining space and an outdoor kitchen, which for me, again, even though I love cooking, I don't get to do it that much, but when we have the family up, my sister's a great cook, my mum's a great cook, and so we kind of get to use this space, this beautiful outdoor kitchen, and then the outdoor bathroom beyond. So everything's sort of here, self-contained, which is super fun because, you know, we bring everything out here and we could almost spend the whole weekend just out here playing. The dogs have a great time, obviously, as you've heard. We've got the barbecue, we've got the fridge, the ice maker, the dishwasher, we've got the bathroom and showers beyond. And it just feels like a great space to come and, you know, relax for the day and it's almost like a home in your home. And again, it's just lovely being outside. I love the pool. Being able to entertain within this space it is really important to us. And so we've kind of added this big, I guess, orangery space where I said there's lots of, you know, the citrus, but also a place where we can kind of host anywhere from, you know, 5 to 60 people in here. And it's just a really lovely space that feels, again, connected to the exterior. The horses are down there in the vista, but also feels really connected to the pool, and a space that we just love to come and hang. And I think this is, you know, one of the things why it felt like it was the last missing piece of the puzzle. Now it just feels like every element within, from the house to the veggie garden to the front lake to, you know, the space at the end, our nursery, now to this pool area, which sort of has everything here. It just feels like now everything feels harmonious. It feels connected, and the space and the renovation after 8 years finally feels complete. The meaning of home for me is really about self-expression. And I think the 4 walls that we're bound by at home now more than ever, because there's so much going on in the world, really need to be that kind of expression of ourselves, and we need to feel like, you know, we're connected to that space, and we feel so at home and so at ease and so surrounded and nourished by each space. But I think, again, it should be soulful, it should be personable, it should tell the story of where you've been, who you are now, where you're going. And just like we put on, you know, our fashion and our clothes, and we choose outfits of the day, that's exactly the representation of our home. It should tell people about us instantaneously as soon as they walk through the door. And it should feel special, and it should feel soulful, and we should feel connected to ourselves, but also to the space that we've created.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Posy. Welcome to my house in Melbourne, Australia. I can't wait to show you guys what I created. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, I'm Posy. I'm a hairdresser and I own 2 hairdressing salons.
And I'm Mark, I work in construction.
And welcome to our house in Melbourne, Australia. So we originally were not looking to buy in Brighton. We were looking to buy in Sandringham, and we just couldn't get the right property to stick for our price range. And this house was actually so run down and such a big dog's breakfast that they didn't even have it up online. Our twins were only 8 weeks old and had only been out of hospital for 2 weeks. And we were approached and hassled. They actually chased us down the street, right? To try and show us this house. And this guy's just like, it's so bad, it's so run down, we can't even take photos of it. This is what it looked like for its previous sale, but we think it would be the perfect fit for you guys and we can make it work for your budget. So we came and had a look, and this room we're actually sitting in now was their main bedroom. It looked so bad. This beautiful fireplace had been knocked down and it was just a hole in the back of it that we didn't work out actually until we bought it. But it just had these beautiful bones that we loved. All the cornices in all the room, the ceiling roses, it all just had this beautiful feeling about it. I've always wanted like an old English, house that I could make feel like a home, nothing modern, and put a whole lot of color into it. So we saw it and we made it work, and then we spent the next 7 years renovating it.
Yep. And for me, it's double brick, so it made it easy. So it wasn't going to fall apart, could do what we wanted, and there we go. So the house was built in 1931 originally. The original owner built it himself. He had originally the block's 1,060 square metres. It's an old, almost Tudor English heritage. It's double brick. It's got really solid foundations, so it's easy to work with in terms of being able to modify and make it into what it is today.
So this is our formal living room. We really wanted to make this a space that we could use as a family to watch TV, but also for entertaining with friends, sitting around the fireplace and having a drink. This couch, again, I was very lucky to be hand-me-down from my auntie, so that worked out perfectly. And like I said, just always having some nice soft lamps. They're the only lighting that we have on in the house. It's really important for me to have lots of little trinkets around the house of my mum. One of my favorite ones is this key ring that was hers. So she was given this by my grandmother when she was pregnant with me because she kept losing her keys and they could never find them. So this kind of big clip just means so many memories, and I just remember Mum always having it in her bag, even from a little kid, and always hearing that story. This gorgeous old man is from my Uncle Fred, from Mount Eliza, who was married to my auntie, and it just always reminds me of all the trinkets that they have in their house. So when my mum passed away, I just wanted to take as much of her stuff from her house and bring it to ours as constant memories. These dishes were just a big part of family dinners with her and always being there. So finding a place for them to sit was always really important for us. The detail in the windows was one of our favorite things when we saw the house, and part of the bones that we loved. These are kind of very old English details in windows, and even though it's a little bit warped and got a few cracks, we kind of love that gives us character and something you see as you first enter through the house. So when we moved into the house, we were absolutely disgusted to find that once the wardrobes that were originally along this wall they'd actually knocked out this whole fireplace that was originally here from when it was first built, and all we had was like a big hole in it. It took us about 3 years to even find someone that knew how to rebuild a fireplace because it's such an old trade. And finally we got it all rebuilt in, and it's something that we use every single night, almost in winter, especially when we're entertaining. So this tapestry of this beautiful lady was actually something that I found in my mum's garage that I knew she had done many, many years ago when she was a nurse. The story behind that was that as a nurse, she used to work on night shift in an X-ray ward, and in between the patients coming in, this is what she would do. And when I found it in her garage, it was all cracked and the glass, and it had been up at my grandparents' house for many years. And I was just so grateful when someone was able to restore it for me and we could find a beautiful place above the fireplace for it. So I love my two little Pinocchio men, the little one here and the big one on the floor that I found just in a gift shop. But Mark absolutely hates it. So it's definitely one of those things he has a strong feeling about. But, you know, they're here and I'm hoping one day I never find them in the actual fireplace. So fingers crossed. So if I get to pick my spot in this living area, it's here and Mark's will be there. Just, you know, sharing a glass of wine at night in front of the fireplace. It's my favorite thing to be able to do. And I find these chairs are super comfortable without making me want to go to sleep. Plus they're the best in front of the fire. This room has the most beautiful detailed cornices and ceiling roses. We had to spend a bit of time getting them restored when we first moved in, and there was a lot of, you know, chipping off all the paint, and they've just come up so beautifully. It was definitely one of our favorite things of the whole house when we first moved in. This is our dining room. I really wanted to keep this as a dining room. When we moved in, they kind of used this as a bit of a study, whereas I grew up sitting around a dining room for Christmas dinners and family dinners at my grandparents' house and my auntie's house, and even my mum in a small 2-bedroom flat, she had a dining room table. So it was really important for us to keep that and be able to do that. I love having Christmas Day here with either our smaller family or my extended. So, you know, finding that space to be able to set the table was really important for us. I love, you know, lamps and having some decorative books around. Again, these are little trinkets from my aunties and uncle's house down in Mount Eliza. They're just memories of when I spent a lot of time down there as a kid that I was able to bring into my house. This beautiful Chanel, you know, illustration was given to me from a client that said she didn't want it anymore and loved the style of it for my house. So this is just a nice little collection. I change this around a little bit depending on what I see and what I've got in my cupboards and what I want to pull out. I clearly love pink. Pink is my favorite color, and I'm very, very lucky that now Mark loves pink, it seems, as well. So I'm obviously very drawn to pink. As soon as my interior designer showed me any pattern, any color, I gravitate to pink. I actually had to make a really big effort to pull back from it in the house. Otherwise, I think it would literally look like a love heart everywhere. But, you know, these books and everything, the shakers, you know, everything's just got that underlining soft tone. I do love that in the dining room, we have a lot more of a look of like a, you know, earthy orange, which I don't really have anywhere else in the house. And I felt like it really matched in to pull in from those neutral colors in the front living room and moving them into the dining room. This table was one of our things that we actually bought as soon as we moved in, and we love that in the legs are in the middle, so you know you can sit quite a few around here without anyone having to sit awkwardly at a leg. You know, it's definitely used for homework, coloring in, painting, which is unfortunate, but that's what happens when you have 3 kids. So it's well loved and just a really happy space for us. These chairs, you know, that were one of Mark's thing that he loved. He wanted to be able to sit comfortably at a dining room table for hours and hours. We do sometimes like the fireplace in here when we have guests over as well, which just gives you that really nice homely warm feel. So Mark and I saw this painting, and when we first looked at it, we absolutely loved it. I definitely saw it fitting straight away into the dining room because of the tones. And then one night we were sitting at our kitchen bench staring straight at it, and Mark was like, "That's a rabbit." And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's not meant to be a rabbit. It's meant to be layers of paint." You know, the artist had explained that all to me, and he said, "No, it looks like a rabbit with red squares coming out of its bum." And ever since I've seen that, I've never been able to forget it and not see it. So it might be one of those artworks that eventually gets replaced in the house, because once you see a rabbit in your artwork, I don't know, it's not really my vibe anymore, but it does still work tonally through the house. So it's staying here for now. So this fireplace, we do sometimes love to light. It doesn't get lit often, but it is just so cool to have a second fireplace. This painting, we saw this artist called Layla Millie, and she's French, and we'd seen her, I think literally on Facebook, she came up. And one day Mark messaged me when he was at work and just said, "She's having a fire sale, quick, is there any ones that you want?" And we managed to get our hands on this beautiful floral painting. It actually was put above this fireplace not long after we moved in, and none of the other colour palette had been designed. So really the whole dining room did come a lot from the colours in this painting. Luckily there's a lot of pink in there, but we did work off this for the rest of the room. So I love having these pelmets above all my windows that I have curtains. I just find that it makes it feel a lot, you know, more grand, a lot higher, and it just finishes off without having to see that curtain roll. This pattern is actually in our kitchen as well, and I just loved it so much as soon as I saw it, and just really spoke to me. So the renovation, we really started as soon as we moved in, even though we had like $0 to do anything with. We wanted to turn this room straight away back into a front living room. However, it definitely was a tools room for the better part of 2 years. We put a wall up between the kitchen and where our bedroom is now so that we could turn it back into a 3-bedroom house. My first priority was to kind of get the outside looking as green as possible, just knowing that gardens take such a long time to grow, and I always wanted to be able to look out and see green wherever you looked outside of the window. So firstly, once we kind of did that wall in the back bedroom, we started to look at doing the outside. And I then decided one day that I definitely wanted to paint the outside of the house. And I thought that the outside of the house would be best being white. So Mark spent a whole weekend painting the whole of the outside of the house white with a crane to get up to all the top parts. And then I hated it. So I was telling my cousin who lives around the corner how much I hated it. And one morning she popped in about 8 o'clock with a brochure and said, "You should definitely paint it all black. Like, it does look terrible white, and I think it should be black." So that night before Mark got home from work, the whole of the outside of the house that I could reach had been painted black. And I hadn't even told him what was happening, so.
And I got to come home and continue painting till about 11 o'clock at night because it looked terrible.
It looked terrible. So we got the whole house, all the outside kind of done quite quickly, and then we just picked off room by room for the next 7 years.
Most of the construction I kind of led or had friends help me. We've got a friend who's a really handy carpenter, so he'd come and chip in on weekends and at nights to do bits and pieces. We stopped for COVID for 2 years because Posey's shop shut down and I was busy doing stuff with work, so.
We had no money to keep going because the shop was shut down, so.
We had a little pause and we boarded up one section of the house for the better part of 18 months, and then as we came out of the back end of COVID, we committed to it and we finished the whole thing off.
If we ever moved again, I would really want to live in the space, you know, for a good year or 18 months, live in the seasons in the house, because, you know, you use a house differently depending on the seasons, and especially in Melbourne, our seasons go like this, and we have quite strong different seasons. And after living here for a whole year, 18 months, we changed the way that we lived in the house. The kids' ages change the way that you also live in a house. And so just taking your time to work out where the light comes in, where's the warmth, where's the functionality around the house, and, you know, don't rush and don't be afraid to change your mind, and take your time sitting on an idea and talking about it. I think we spent, you know, the first, you know, 6-7 years where every single night, especially if we had a drink, that was like all we spoke about is ideas. We could do this, thinking about this, looking at inspo, you know, asking for people's opinion, especially people maybe who are older or have had kids before, and how their life worked around depending on what was going on with their family. So the kitchen was actually the hardest room for Mark and I to design through the whole house. We had 4 different designs and we kept changing our mind. We have 3 kids, so it has to be functional, and both working a lot, but I still spend plenty of time in the kitchen, whether it's lunchboxes, dinners, you know, breakfasts. And we just found that this ended up being our best design for a 3-bedroom house. I absolutely love pink, clearly, and originally I really pushed maybe to have a full pink kitchen, but I definitely second-guessed myself a little bit and ended up with just a pink island bench. It's definitely one of my favorite little pops of color throughout the whole house that you wouldn't expect. One thing that was not negotiable for me was a fridge behind the cupboards. You can see this from so many points throughout the whole house, and I just wanted it to look really nice and sleek, and that you just couldn't tell what was going on. It all looked nice and neat. The fruit bowl, you know, the tower, it's something that just gets used 24/7 in our house. Our kids eat a lot of fruit, and I was just finding replenishing it all the time, going to the supermarket. So nice and big, everyone can just come and help themselves. It doesn't always look this pretty, but it is nice when it does. So we decided to go, I really wanted to go with that brass finish throughout the whole house. And so all the knobs have got, you know, brass, and our tapware is brass. It was just something that I'd seen and really loved. These white tiles actually have a bit of a pink underlying tone, and I'm obsessed with them. I really wasn't sure about an all white kitchen, but I also am very aware that not everyone loves pink or all these bright colors. So these are one of my favorite finds, because if you look at them for a while, you can see all the different tones and colors in the background. Another little trinket that came from my auntie's house down at Mount Eliza. I'm quite lucky. I feel like every time I go down there, I'm able to take up something else that's nice and little from her. And I just love having all these bits around the house that speak to me and make it feel more homely. It's like, I think it's meant to be for like someone who bakes and puts like a little cake there, and then you know, keep it all fresh. I don't really have a lot of time to bake, but sometimes if I do, I feel like I could use it then. Another lamp, you know, it was always my vision to be able to find a spot for a nice lamp for in the kitchen, you know, at night, to give that nice romantic lighting. And this cup is another thing that my mum used to use all the time for coffee. So it sits there, which is just a nice way to see it every morning when we wake up and in the kitchen doing breakfast and everything. So this room is highly used in our house. Funnily enough, Mark and I end up sitting in here more, and the kids seem to be in the front formal room. I don't know, work that one out, probably because I'm in the kitchen a lot. This artwork here on this wall is definitely my favorite in the whole of the house. So we did spend a lot of time to try and find an artwork this size. We spent a lot of time questioning whether or not we would knock down this whole wall in the whole renovation. Mark was not happy with that, about trying to knock that down. He said that was like kind of rebuilding the whole house. So here it is. We love this gel bell. So this is a cowboy, you know, with her cowboy boots on, drinking a moonshine, and it's from two Torquay artists, gel bell, and we love it. The couch was designed really around, I had this, you know, custom design for us, and it was designed really around this space and making this, you know, area feel as big as possible, but also easy to move through, because it's a walkway, you know, from the kitchen to the bathroom and to the bedrooms as well. I love that it's like on a corner, you know, it's in an L shape, you know, you really sink into it. It's super comfortable. It was made out of, you know, outdoor fabric in the hope that you wouldn't see all the marks that kids leave around. But, you know, like we said, we let our house be lived in by 3 kids. And so things just, you know, sometimes the marks you've just got to put up with. I love our gallery wall. It's just got all our, you know, pictures from family members and the kids when they were younger, just beautiful memories. I love when people walk into the house, they look at it, it's just really pretty and beautiful to see those memories all the time. One of my favorite things about this room is this cute little bit of artwork that Dusty did, my 8-year-old daughter. She did that in prep at art class, and I just love the colors that she picked, and I thought she loves seeing it framed up. It's definitely her favorite thing. She shows people all the time. Flowers just genuinely make me happy. One of our favorite things to do is go to the South Melbourne market in Melbourne on a Saturday or a Sunday, get some, you know, dim sims or something to eat for the kids for lunch, and picking up a whole lot of bunches of flowers and setting them out throughout the house. And yeah, these are my little artichoke flowers. I haven't had them before, but I think they're super cute, and I think they'll probably become a little bit of a staple, because I'm hoping they'll last a little while in the house. So my color, like, I don't know, I like to say it looks like a unicorn throughout in our house. Like, there is just color absolutely everywhere, and I'm very, very lucky that I get to do whatever I want. And these days Mark turns around and actually likes all the feminine and pink and everything in the house. My cousin and my family, I guess, always had quite a strong sense of style, and, you know, it was always about making a home, you know, and feeling like a home and warmth as you walked into the house. My cousin, you know, around the corner, she has a very similar style that's bright and colorful, and she also has an English style house that I grew up in and loved. And so when we saw this one, that was definitely a big draw card. I mean, I definitely have copied her quite a lot on a lot of things, and definitely ask her opinion on everything. But the house just looks It's colourful and it's homely, and I definitely feel like I took that style and ran with it, and I just think colour makes you feel happy, and it's bright and it's joyful, and I just think, yeah, we were just definitely not into the greyish beige sign. Just wanted to be happy and colourful for us.
We've had a phase of pink curtains. I think I get to have my little inputs on probably the structure of the architecture, I guess. So things you wanted, for instance, our bedroom has a wallpapered ceiling. So setting that up so it actually looks functional rather than just one, I guess, monotone space. Kind of, we was able to influence that, so it kind of has nuances to it, so it actually works as a room. But generally, no, I just shrug my shoulders, as they say, happy wife, happy life, and generally she's pretty happy.
Yeah. Welcome to the master bedroom, our most colourful room of the house. My favourite detail by far for this room is the fact that I was able to convince Mark and our wallpaper man, Ronnie, to put wallpaper all over the ceiling. I'm obsessed with this wallpaper with all the different colours. The kids, when we wake up in the morning, they spend a lot of time counting the colours. You know, I spy with the colours, and I don't know, it's just so interesting, and it makes me feel so happy at night when I get into bed and I'm just looking around at all this beautiful colour in this room. Once we picked the wallpaper, everything just kind of went from there with my interior designer. I really loved the idea of the skirting and the door frames all being in a bold colour as well. I really feel like in your master bedroom, you know, it's for you and it's what makes you happy. And this is why I felt so comfortable to go so colourful in this bedroom. And I was very lucky that Mark was on board with this, and he was just happy to do his thing, which is happy wife, happy life. One of my favourite things is these three pictures. This is another tapestry that my mum had done that I found in her house, and we had it framed up, and I was so grateful when it matched in with all the colour tones. These illustrations are from a little side brand that I have called Bompies, and that was just something we had done for the brand, as well as this gorgeous one of, I love the idea of the husband reading to, you know, his girl in the bath. Not that that ever happens to us, but I think it's such a nice romantic idea, and I think it works in this room so well. They're from a gorgeous Australian illustrator called Alexandra Nay, and I just love her work. Having a padded headboard and all beautiful cushions is definitely an idea that I got from my cousin. I was always obsessed with her master bedroom from a little kid, which was set up very similar to this. I love just how cozy and soft it feels, you know, while you're in bed and sitting in bed and reading. It's just such a lovely feeling. I'm really lucky that this is my whole wardrobe, and I kicked Mark out to the spare room. So I just loved the idea of having a really big wardrobe. We tried to talk about doing a walk-in wardrobe in this space, and I just felt like we were going to lose a lot more room trying to do a walk-in wardrobe than we would have, you know, doing this big long wall of cupboards. The pink details with the leather on the doorknobs is one of my favorite details of the whole room. Along with this gorgeous couch at the end of our bed. I absolutely love when Frankie came to live with us. He is a little bit older, he's 11, and so he doesn't always spring right up onto the bed. And to Mark's absolute hatred, he sleeps on the end of our bed. So the couch is just a nice little hopping point for him to get up onto our bed and makes it a little bit easier for us. So this is our bathroom, but because there's 2 showers in there, most of the time the 3 kids just shower in here all together, and it just makes life a little bit easier. I have a gorgeous pedestal sink that we actually kept from when we renovated one of my salons like 8-9 years ago. And I said to Mark when we redid that bathroom, please keep that, because I will want to put that into one of our bathrooms eventually when we have our old house. It's the colour green as this paint is, and so that's really where we drew that colour from for the woodwork in the bedroom to really bring it all through and make it seamless. Another super fun feature that I love of our bathroom is the fabric around the lights and in the blind is the same pattern that our wallpaper is in our bedroom. So just, you know, matching it all up together and making it all clash but work is one of my favourite things to do. So this little space out here just makes our bedroom feel more like a master like sanctuary rather than just a bedroom. It originally was just steps that then went down to kind of an empty space. And I convinced Mark, you know, one day to build it all up and make it all level. And then we had chairs built in. The kids on, you know, summer holidays and on weekends when the weather is sometimes beautifully warm in Melbourne, we lie out here in the mornings. We have breakfast out here, coffees, you know, you can lie out in the sun. It's my son's Archie favorite place of the whole house. And it just makes you feel like you're in your own little space away from everything else. So this is our laundry, which is actually right off our bedroom, which is why we put such amazing wallpaper in it. Although I did always secretly want a laundry that looked so beautiful, maybe it made me want to do my washing. It still doesn't, but I am very lucky my mother-in-law does do quite a lot of that for me. But yes, this wallpaper was definitely deliberately done to clash with the bedroom wallpaper, but also work because you do see it from both the bedroom as well as other parts of the room. These curtains that hang, you know, in front of my washing machine and my dryer are unbelievably impractical, but one of my favorite things about the laundry. It just gives it that really soft, different feminine feel. And I love when I do spend the time to hang them and they're looking all perfect like they are today. My favorite thing about my home is the fact that it feels lived in with kids. And they are allowed to, you know, it doesn't always look this perfect, and it also doesn't, they're meant to feel like it's their house, and that we have, you know, at stages we can have 10 kids running around while we've got friends over and entertaining, as well as all the different family kind of bits and bobs that I have. My mum passed away a couple of years ago, and I've got quite a lot of her things around the house that I find, you know, really special because it gives me a really big reminder of every day, and it makes her feel like a part of our lives.
I like my house to feel like a home, so I guess we deliberately carpeted the bedroom spaces, the spaces where the kids hang out. It's nice to get up and walk in, have carpet to sit on, to play on. It's nice under your feet. It's generally pretty robust, which is a key thing for like the kids. They're 3 kids under 8, and they like to smash into stuff. So our walls are all pretty hardy, so when they draw on them, we can repaint them. The wallpaper's a problem. I don't love when they draw on the wallpaper because
Just means I get to pick new wallpaper though when they draw on it too much.
This is true. But yeah, no, it feels like a home, and each evolution as we've changed things has made it, we've tweaked things to make it feel that next step of just that you can relax into it and enjoy it.
So this is my kids' room. Yes, we have all 3 of them sleeping in one room. So we have 8-year-old twins and a 4-year-old. And when you have twins, they don't sleep in different rooms as babies. They sleep, you know, almost next to each other in a cot. And then they sleep, you know, in little beds, and they get in bed with each other, and you quite often find them together in the morning. So when we went to do this room, we knew that this was where all our kids were going to sleep. Kids love sleeping in here together. Yes, sometimes bedtime, they can be a little bit more mucking around, you know, talking and chatter, but it's really the cutest thing to hear. And I just think it's such a special part of their childhood memories that they all got to go to sleep in the same room. And it's just so comforting. I actually think my twins have only slept apart maybe 3 times in their whole life. So it's not something that I can see changing anytime soon. And I just don't even know if they would want to sleep apart or whether they could, to be honest, if they were in the same house. I really wanted this to still be like a fun playroom, but you know, for the kids, for their bedroom, but obviously I still wanted it to be stylish and practical. The drawers underneath and up the stairs just means more storage and easier to keep things organized and clean. And now with 3 kids as well, we use some of it for clothes and storage like that. These hot air balloons we got when the twins were first born. My in-laws actually bought them for us, and we had 2 above each of their bunks. And Kit was also given 2, and so we have them scattered through the bedroom. And I just love that all of them got given hot air balloons when they were born, and it's hopefully something that they can then take themselves and use for their children or give them to their children. I think it's just such a cute little, you know, thing, decor, but also meaningful as they've all got their own set. These artwork I actually had for a very long time before we even moved into the house. The I love you to the moon and back was a saying that my mum and I used to say to each other all the time. So I bought it when I was first moved out of home, and I always loved the colour in it, as well as just the saying is super cute. The butterflies just match really well in with this, you know, with them as a little set. And it was something that I was like, always would look so cute in a kid's room, nice and colourful, you know, not, you know, gender neutral. And yeah, they're two of my favourite things in this room. So this is our main bathroom, the kids' bathroom, and then our guest bathroom. So fun fact about this is I actually tiled this myself during a COVID lockdown. Mark was still able to go to work, the salons were shut, and the twins were able to go to their care. So I had about a week when Kit was a baby in between her sleeps, and I, you know, tiled this. Mark would come home and he would do the cuts and he would finish off all the lines. And I'm proud of myself. Mark says there's a line that makes it look very uneven, but yeah, I tiled this bathroom. This picture is a slim Aaron, and I absolutely love having a painting in our bathroom. It definitely freaks people out because this lady feels like she watches you wherever. So when you're sitting on the toilet, it does look like she's watching you, and it's definitely something all our guests comment on, which I love. It's something quirky, it's something different. So this is our spare room, our playroom. This is where Mark's clothes are kept. And I don't know, I love this space. This couch was the starting inspo for this. So this couch actually folds out to be a bed. We do have guests come and stay with us from the country because Mark's from the country in Victoria, but I didn't want a full spare room to be taken up by a bed the whole time. The kids spend a lot of time playing in here, whether it's Lego or, you know, Duplo or anything else, building bricks or just having fun, you know, when they've got friends over. The wallpaper is one of my favorite things about this room. I love that it's just so delicate and it's so neutral, but it still makes such a big impact. I love that I have a pink couch, even if it is in my spare room, of course. And yeah, it's just really, really practical. I love the way that we designed this to be such a multi-use space in our house. I always loved working. I started working in a hairdressing salon when I was 13. I much preferred work than school. I'm dyslexic, so school was really hard for me, and it was so nice when I started working as a Saturday girl, you know, even just sweeping hair and washing hair and everything, to feel really good and naturally good at something for really the first time. And I finally started my apprenticeship when I was 21, and I just loved it. I won Apprentice of the Year, which was really exciting. When I had been qualified for about 18 months to 2 years, I opened up my first salon, and that was just little old me. And then by the first year, I built it to 3 staff members, and then 3 years later, I opened my second one because of the demand just around the corner. And I've now had those businesses for 11 years. And this year, for the first time, you know, in a long time, I felt like I really wanted to get back to being a little bit more creative and not just worry about paying super and the books and paying the bills and everything. And I entered for the first time Victoria Hairdresser of the creative side. So I got to do a wonderful photo shoot with a really talented team, and I was nominated, which is really exciting. And I'll find out in a couple of weeks if I win. But yeah, it was so great to feel creative with color and my style and feel more confident in myself to be able to actually do something like that. Welcome to our entryway. I love that you start the house with like its own little designated entryway. I always like to have lamps in all my spaces. I hate big overhead lighting, and I just want it to feel nice and warm and homely when you walk in. This piece of artwork is one of my favorite in the whole house. It's a little family portrait of us that was hand illustrated. It's set in Melbourne City. Mark and I started dating in Melbourne City. We got married in Melbourne City, and this is at the Botanical Gardens. We actually had it created just before Kit was born. So fun little fact, she was just kept blank until she was born, and then we had it put in. And I love that you kind of walk into the house and it's not like an in-your-face portrait. It's just this soft, colorful, you know, little family. I love having like a lamp, like I said, and a table, and I just leave my bag here and work bads, but there's also this curtain as a little fun fact. is really, really great for storing anything underneath it that you don't want to be seen but used all the time. The scallops, you know, they match the rugs, and I just felt like it was the perfect little table to fit into the entryway. So these photos are from our wedding. They're my favorite 4 photos that we have from the collection. We got married in Melbourne City. So I'm very lucky that I have a cousin who sometimes gives me some beautiful hand-me-downs. This chair is one of them. And it was just perfect. I love the idea of a chair in your entryway, so you can just sit down and feel comfortable, put your shoes on. It's just a really nice welcoming place to have one. Family. Home means to me. I feel like wherever you're at home, it feels like family, comfort, relaxing, you know, enjoyment. I think you should really enjoy your home, whichever way you use it. It should be enjoyment all the time, and a happy place and a safe space for you and your family, your kids.
Yeah, and home for me, I guess, is, I take it back to a Sunday. We just had a wet, rainy weekend here, and Sunday was a few drinks, the fire was lit, the kids watched a movie on the couch with the fire. That's what it is. It's,
a space you want to spend your time.
Yeah, that's the key.
Homeworthy, it was so much fun showing through my house, but I've got a client in a few minutes, so I need to get back to the salon. Thanks so much.
Hi, Homeworthy. I'm Alyssa Owens. Welcome to my home in Melbourne. Come on in.
This summer, spend the hottest months of the year in style with Homeworthy as we visit the most extraordinary homes around the world. From the sun-soaked shores of the Hamptons to the classic beachfronts of Nantucket to the vibrant courtyards of Morocco, be sure to subscribe to Homeworthy's summer series to make every day feel like a vacation. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Owens, and I am an interior decorator, and we are here today in my home in Melbourne, Australia. So my husband and I had been looking for homes in the inner north for probably a year before we came across this property in Northcote. And at that time I was pregnant with my first son, Theodore, and we were looking for a place that we could grow into and that suited family life. We were in this beautiful heritage apartment in Carlton, but really needed some outdoor space and a place where, we had more room. And we came to an open house in the afternoon, and I'm so grateful that we came in the afternoon because the northerly light coming through the windows was just absolutely gorgeous. It was the dead of winter, but the house still felt really warm, and it became instantly, I instantly recognized that this could be a place where I could sort of envision our family life. It had this gorgeous garden in the back, and it was easy to, picture sort of moving in between the living room and the garden as a family. Now, the space definitely needed work. The kitchen at the time was a bit outdated from the early 90s, but that really only added to the appeal for us. I wanted something that I could put my mark on without having to do a full gut renovation. We were in the height of COVID, and with building costs being what they were, we didn't want to spend a ton of money and a ton of time redoing the whole thing. So there was enough of a need to renovate that we could focus on the kitchen and the dining and the bathrooms, and the rest of the house was gorgeous as it was and could just use with a few sort of, cosmetic upgrades. So here in the combined living and dining space, we completely redid the kitchen, and also added these steel frame doors and windows towards the back of the house to create a better flow between the garden and the indoors. It's a bit of an Aussie thing, I've realized, is sort of this indoor-outdoor living as a design priority. We also had one bathroom in the original home that we split into two and connected one of those to the ensuite, or connected one of those to the master bedroom as an ensuite. And we refinished the floors, we painted, and we added some lovely new joinery at the front of the house to increase storage because, you know, kids. And the rest of the house was largely left untouched at that point. We've done some things as we've lived in the space, we've done more. So we've painted rooms as we've sort of moved in and lived in the space. We've painted the shed in the back and added some of our own touches to the garden. But most of the work was done and completed in 2021 before we moved in. So here we are in the hallway. You can see there's a long hallway that leads back to the combined living and dining area. And we have the bedrooms all here on the left-hand side, but we'll pop into those a little bit later. But before we do, I want to show you a few pieces in the hallway, starting with the entry hooks. So these are from Christina Dam Studios, and I just think it's a lovely sculptural moment. So they're made out of oak, and yeah, add a nice little sculptural element right at the beginning of the house. We have the guest room over here, my son's nursery in here, and here we've come across our first artwork. This is a landscape from a local artist. His name is Zach Tilley, and we've actually purchased 3 of his artwork, so you could see. The other one is over here. He does these beautiful landscapes of mostly the Northern Territory, but he sort of pops all over Australia. And one of my favorite elements of the pieces is that he does these borders, these built-in borders on the canvas. So you can see there's a stripe here and a more graphic border over there. The colors just make me super happy when I get to walk out of my bedroom every day and look at them. This is a traditional Victorian terrace in Northcote, and it has a lot of beautiful ornate details out front, and you'll see there's this gorgeous wisteria tree wrapping around one of the front posts, and that's what greets you when you walk up onto the porch. And then through a very brightly colored yellow door that I painted into the terrace. And the first 3 rooms are our bedrooms. So we have a guest room, my son's nursery, and then the master bedroom. And as you're walking down the hallway, you come into a much more expansive back space, which is where the combined living, dining, and kitchen area is. And if you continue through to the back of the house, you'll find some steel frame windows that really frame our back garden. Our back garden isn't huge, but it really packs a punch in sort of the design and feel. And those steel frame doors lead out into the lovely space outside. I would describe my personal style as more modern. I'm really drawn to clean lines and curves. At the same time, I love objects and furnishings that have a story. So I tend to bring in vintage pieces quite a bit in my designs, in my own home and with the clients that I work with. So I guess that's a bit of sort of an eclectic design style. I'm very drawn to color and to sculptural form and natural materials, and now all those elements play a role in the spaces that I create. With this home in particular, I think our vision and our priorities were really, again, to connect to the outside. We wanted to make sure that we had a nice flow between the garden and the indoors. And we love to collect art. So we were lucky to come to the home with a few pieces that we already really loved and acquired some more pieces since we've been in, mostly Australian and New Zealand artists. And so we really saw this home sort of as a canvas for our artworks that we love so dearly. So when I was designing and when I was making decoration decisions, I had those at the forefront of my mind, those pieces that we love and the pieces that we wanted to bring into the space. Here we are in the combined living, dining, and kitchen space. And this is our favorite part of the home. We spend the most time in here because it has so many purposes. It does a lot of hard work for us. So it's where we are gathering with friends and family. It's where my sons have, typically their toys are all spread out here. And it's where we're hosting as well and cooking dinners. So I'll walk you through a few of the pieces that I love the most in here, probably starting with this, which is really the centerpiece of the room. So this is a work by Australian artist Zach Tilley, and it is a piece that we commissioned specifically for this space. So when we moved in, we realized we had a design challenge of this really long wall right here without much architectural detail, and we needed to sort of divide it into zones. So we made the living room over here, and we really needed something quite substantial with scale in this area over here. So we knew the size that we wanted, and we went on a hunt for an artist who could produce something that we loved. And we got in contact with Zach through a good friend who acts sort of as an art consultant for us. And I think, you know, a lot of the commission process for some people is not enjoyable, and we absolutely loved our experience with Zach. So we had sent him some images that really resonated with us from his other collections, and gave him the size and gave him some colors that were really speaking to us, and off he went to produce this. And we're so happy. I get to look at this, you know, 50 times a day, and I never get sick of it. So each time I look at the piece, I feel like I'm seeing something different. So yeah, the landscapes are really, you know, the physical features are gorgeous, and then there's this pink either river or waterfall, depending on how you want to interpret it, coming through the center. I just love it. When I'm working with clients to commission a piece, there are a few things that I think are really important to keep in mind, or some practices to follow. So one is connecting with the artist early on and sharing what you like most about their work, giving visual examples from their collections that really resonate with you, and setting up a system where you're, you know, checking in along the way, where the artist can share updates with you and you're able to provide feedback if that's something that they're open to. But I think probably the most important part, the most important approach would be to let go a little bit. So I think some people go into the commission process thinking that they're going to get a certain thing out of it, and you know, artists are artists because they create from their heart, and they create. That's the way they create beautiful things. And so I think it's really important to remember that you will maybe not get the exact piece that you're imagining in your head, but that really is, you know, true to the artist, which is ultimately going to create something more meaningful in your home. Okay, so over here into the living room. So pointing out just a couple pieces that I love the most. These sculptures, we have a woven one and a clay one, are from Javier Reyes. He's out of Oaxaca in Mexico. And I love them for their shape and their scale. I think it's a beautiful form over in the corner, and adds a little bit of height to balance out the height of the tree. And I especially love them because this one especially is virtually indestructible. So having two young boys around, I find that I can't put pretty or fragile things on the floor, but if this gets knocked over, it's, you know, it'll still be safe. We have a collection of my, a huge design magazine collection over here. I think I have a lot of old architectural digests that I picked up secondhand. My and my husband's record collection, which we're still building, and a few other pieces that are special. So this lamp is from a Spanish brand called Los Objetos Decorativos, and they're based out of Spain. And funny story about this lamp, my client fell in love with it. One of my clients in New York fell in love with this lamp. and we accidentally ordered 2 of them. And so when I went to go to her to visit the site when I was in New York last year, I was so excited to bring the second one home with me. So it was a very happy accident. I looked a bit silly carrying this big bag through the airport, the international terminal, but it was totally worth it to have such a lovely piece come back with me. And it's kind of nice. This client is a very good friend of mine as well, so it's nice that we have matching pieces across the world. This is a Queensland bottle tree. So these trees are obviously native to Australia and Queensland, and they're known for their very large trunks, so they can get quite substantial. They're having a bit of a moment right now, I feel like. I'm seeing a lot of bonsai versions of Queensland bottle trees in design, but this is just a regular one that I picked up off of Facebook Marketplace. I do think I would like to to repot her at one point, get a new pot, but I'm a little bit worried that the transition might shake her up a little bit. So we're keeping her as is for now, and she's getting the right amount of light. So healthy little plant in the corner, and add some interest. So this is a big old coffee table made out of marble from a local supplier named Cocoa Republic, and we love it. I think the veining is fabulous. Typically, it's covered in toys, so it has become my eldest son's parking lot for his car toys. It's become his easel when he's doing crafts and paintings. But on the rare occasion that it is clear like this, it's so lovely to look at the veining. So we typically keep coffee table books here. So these are some of my favorite, one of my favorite designers, Studio Ashby, has a brilliant book out, and I love to browse for inspiration. And this is just one of my favorite objects in the house. So this is called the allium vase, and it's by a local florist. Her name is Hattie Malloy, and she does brilliant bouquets and arrangements of flowers, but also sells these aluminum vases. So it's honed aluminum, and the special part about it is that we'll get a shot from it later, but there's actually a grate in the middle, which allows for easy arranging. I am not a florist, but I do love to spend some time on arrangements, and it makes it really easy to just stick different stems in and to create something quite grand and architectural. It's very user-friendly. So yeah, it's quickly become one of my favorite objects in the home. Underfoot, we just have a really durable but beautifully colored wool rug. It works really hard for us. It manages spills and tracking in some mud and dirt from the garden, and also really has sort of grounded the space with its deep burgundy color. One of the pieces of advice I give clients, and a practice that I also follow, is to start with the art or start with the rug when you're designing a space. And in this space, we used both of those elements to inform our approach to the design. So the rug is this beautiful deep burgundy, and you can see that that's really informed the rest of the color scheme in the space. And I've pulled out tones and colors from the Zach Tilley piece over on the wall with other bits of furnishings too. And I think that makes it really, really straightforward to create something that feels cohesive. So yeah, hot little tip. Over here, we have a lovely little moment with some new things and some old things. So in my practice and also in my home, I really try to incorporate vintage pieces. This is a Danish floor lamp from the 1970s. I think the chrome and the leather work so well together and obviously fits within the broader scheme of the room. This side table is obviously quite a bit more chunky than the lamp. It's by a local furniture designer. Their name is Fearon, and they do these really chunky, bulbous pieces of furniture that come in an array of beautiful colors. I think this one is called Clay Pot. And up here we have a sculpture from Bondi artist. Her name is Tan Arledge. And she did this on commission for us as well. We were looking for something sculptural, but also serene for this corner. And we had given her, we pointed out some colors and shapes that we were drawn to from her other collections, and she produced this beautiful piece for us. So you should check her out. She's in Bondi. Here we have two vintage safari chairs by the designer, Australian designer Michael Hurst, his name is. These were one of the first pieces that my husband and I purchased together. It was a Facebook marketplace find back when we moved into our Carlton apartment. And they really suited that space. That space was mostly furnished with vintage furniture, and I'm really glad that they found a place over here in a more modern space. So again, I'm always trying to sort of mix the old and new, pieces that are a little bit more clean lined and modern, but also pieces that have a bit of a story. So there's a lovely patina on the wood or on the leather, and the wood's a bit beat up, but adds to its character. And now we are in the garden. So we inherited the garden, a beautiful garden, when we purchased the house, and we've slowly been adding our own touches to it over time. My husband has the green thumb in the family, so he spends quite a bit of time out here. And over here we have a family of agave plants and crepe myrtle above it. So I think this really adds a sort of architectural element to the space. I don't know if you can tell right now, but it is a very cold, gray winter day, and we've had some rain this morning. And what I love about the agave and many parts of this garden is that it stays quite lush and green, even in the dead of winter. So some things have, we've had some ivy and creepers over here that have lost their leaves, but many of the plants and species in here retain their greenery throughout the winter, which is pretty special. Over here we have some more creepers coming up. This is a climbing ficus. Hopefully at one point the whole shed is covered with this. It'll probably take a few more years. We have a few more ficus plants over here as well. This massive bamboo has been so helpful for shade and also privacy. So I don't know if you can see, but we are right on the back of another property back up here. And if the bamboo weren't here, they'd sort of be able to see down onto us. And so it really provides a nice element of privacy for us as well. Over here in the back of the garden, we have a beautiful patch of bamboo that is massive. So it must go 3 or 4 meters high, and it's been so excellent for shade, but also privacy. On the other side of this concrete wall, there's another property right behind us. And so when the bamboo is as lush and as thick as this, it really allows us to have our own little private backyard, even though we're in the inner city in Melbourne. We also have some natives here as well. So this is a Wagga Wagga vine, and in the summer it sort of starts to droop down and creates a little room here, which is quite special as well. But even during the winter, you can see it's doing well. So if you can see here, it looks like it's about to flower. We have these hay. This is the Hay Palisades collection. It's one of my favorite outdoor collections currently, and I think the green and the clean lines, the simple lines, just make it really elegant in a green space, because your focus remains on the plants rather than on the furniture. And here, it's not flowering right now, but this is a Japanese maple that's very special to my husband and I. We do our best to protect it from the possums that come every spring and summer. And in the summer, it has this beautiful bloom that is so lovely to look at. But even during the winter, I find it quite sculptural and architectural, which is nice as well. So one of my favorite things about the backyard is really how it connects to our living room. So we made the decision to do the steel frame windows that you saw earlier, and it's really massively expanded the space that we have as a family. We often keep the doors open when the weather is nice, and we're able to sort of move freely inside and outside. And this area has sort of become an extra room or an extension of the house. And I'm really grateful for that. So especially with two young ones who have bundles of energy, it's nice to have the extra space. And yeah, one thing I'm learning about Australian design is that it's a bit of that sort of connection to the indoors and outdoors is a bit of a thing, because the climate here is a bit more temperate and we can be outside for more of the year. Having spaces that that work together and that open into each other is, I think, one of the hallmarks of Australian design. So this right here is a jade money tree, which is meant to bring good luck, and I feel like it has. It was a find from Facebook Marketplace. So a tip is that Marketplace is a great place to find substantial plants and trees. I think when people are getting ready to move interstate and they can't bring their plants with them, they're putting it on Marketplace. So I found the bottle tree, I found this jade plant, I found a cowrie tree, all on Marketplace. So before you head to your local nursery, give a look on Marketplace first. So I'm actually an educator by trade, and I was an English teacher for almost 10 years while I was living in New Orleans. And design was always sort of a passion project side thing. Like I was doing my own home, I was doing my friends' houses, and then I started taking some short courses in the summer and doing some freelancing to decorate homes in the historic districts in New Orleans. And it just was this, it was just this creative itch that I sort of couldn't get rid of. And so I eventually realized that it was something that I wanted to do professionally, which is when I launched my interior decoration practice. And I feel really lucky to be able to spend my time creating beautiful spaces for people. So thank you for spending time with me in the garden. We are about to head back inside now to talk about the kitchen and the other areas in the home. When we set out to design the kitchen, we were looking for something a bit earthy and masculine, which is why we landed on this darker timber that my architects specified. And I think it just brings a lot of depth and sophistication to the space, and I don't seem to ever get sick of looking at it. We also have a travertine bench top here, which is quite thick. So this is where we do most of our prep work. And our cooking happens over here on this bench top. I am not the best cook, but my husband is and loves it. So he's often the one over at the stove while I'm hanging out with the kids or just sitting here and drinking wine. One of the challenges of the space was the floor plan. So we didn't actually have enough room to do a separate kitchen and dining and living area. So I was hoping for a standalone dining table, but my architects, one of the many clever things they did, Stilo architecture, was design this bench top to transition and step down into this American walnut dining table. And it's ended up saving us so much space, so we had more space to live in the living area, but it still feels distinct in its own right, and you feel like you're at a proper dining table when you're here. So this is where we have all of our meals. It's where we host friends and family, and it brings us a lot of joy. So we knew, because the dining table was so special, that we needed something equally special with the chairs. And my architects actually also turned me on to these dining chairs, which are from Warren Stores. So Warren Store is in Byron Bay, and they import furniture, mostly from Indonesia, but from also a few other places. And it must be the thing that I get asked about most in the home. I think people are immediately drawn to the bold stripe. I wanted something playful and a bit graphic to work in the space. I think it is a sort of a serious space, the kitchen, and I think the dining chairs bring a whole ton of personality and playfulness, while also, being pretty elegant. They're still a beautiful shape, and they also play really well with the Zach Tilley piece over here, which I love so much. This pendant is from the brand A Step, and it brings me so much happiness to look at it every day. My in-laws call it the UFO pendant, but it just adds a really nice, lovely light overhead. So this vase is from a local maker. Her name is Hillary Green. I'm very attracted to sort of the amphora Grecian shape of vases, and this always sits here, although my little one has started to climb up on the counters, and so I'm getting a little bit nervous about this remaining here. She might have to find a new home, but for now, I think she's a perfect match and plays really nicely with these portraits up here. So these portraits are from an Australian artist named Mark Chu. He's also a good friend of ours, and we purchased them in 2019, shortly after we arrived in Australia. And they're waiters. And I love how portraits sort of interact and have conversations with each other when you put them on the wall next to one another. So I think this guy sort of has this detached eyeball that's looking out. The colors really resonated with us as well, the muted pinks and blues. Now, funnily enough, when these paintings were painted, there was a third waiter, which got sold before we purchased these. They got sold to a friend, a sort of friend of a friend, who took them to his apartment in Paris with him. And I kind of like the fact that they're a pair here and they've got a distant sort of cousin or friend overseas. My husband is quite keen to bring the gang back together. So we've started to have conversations with that friend to see if we might actually bring the trio back together. But for right now, the other one lives over in Paris. When we did the renovation, we worked with Stilo Architecture and Forge Construction. And my architects were brilliant for many reasons, but especially for this reason. This beam was exposed. It was an exposed timber beam at the beginning of the renovation journey, and I really wanted to keep it. I have trouble sort of painting over wood because I know it can never go back, and so I wanted to keep it in its wood. And they very rightly convinced me that there would be too much clashing with the darker timbers. And it would detract from the space, and they were right. So it still remains as an architectural feature, but just in its white color, and I'm really grateful for them for this and for many other reasons. My biggest tip when starting a renovation is to find an excellent architect and builder because they make all of the difference in the process. We were really lucky to work with Stilo Architecture and Forged Construction from sort of concept to completion here. And they were incredibly helpful along the way at every step of the way, especially during COVID when building was really challenging. We obviously had to make some decisions based on budget, and I think when it came time to sort of de-scope, we got our initial quote back. It was out of budget for us, so we needed to pull back. We really thought about where we were going to spend the most time and what was going to have the biggest impact on our quality of life. So, for example, these steel framed windows were absolutely an area that we wanted to spend and to splurge. And that is because the amount of light that they brought in, the connection to the outdoor space, and sort of how they expanded the living area really mattered to us. And so that was an area where we knew we wanted to spend. We scaled back, for example, on some custom joinery and did standalone pieces that might be able to move with us as we transition to a new home. We also didn't paint, and I think that's another tip that I have for folks that are renovating. There's no pressure to choose your paint colors right away. We've actually painted over the course of the 3 years that we've been here, and it's allowed us to really live with the space and understand how we're going to use the rooms individually and how we want those spaces to feel. And then we've chosen colors accordingly. So when I walk you through the bedrooms, I'll share more about that. But my tip there would be to wait to live in the space before you choose your paint colors. Okay, so now we're going to head to the front of the house where the bedrooms and the bathrooms are. So come with me. We are here in the master bedroom, and this space was designed with tranquility in mind. I really wanted to walk into a room that felt very intimate and cozy, and I made most of the design decisions with that feeling in mind. We will start with the standout piece in the room, which is this painting by New Zealand artist Kirsty Budge. It's called Ruffling Feathers, and it is one of my favorite paintings in the home. So the colors and the tones and the imagery are quite obviously surreal and a little bit dark, and I love the mood that creates in the space. So what you'll see in the middle of the painting, sort of central, is a woman like cloaked in red. She's actually meant to symbolize, from what I understand, Joan of Arc. And there's some other, dark elements throughout the piece. So I think she's bouncing an eyeball here, sort of like a basketball. And there are other images that I think represent women's body parts throughout the work. And similar to the Zach Tilley painting that I talked about earlier today, every time I look at this painting, I'm seeing something new. I never tire of it. I never get bored. And it creates a really, it's dramatic, but it's also at the same time serene, and it works perfectly in a space like this. So I'm really glad that we have her. So here we have Burl bedside tables. These were purchased from a local vintage reseller, and I love them. They also provide excellent storage. We also have another vintage element on top. This is a Planet lamp. Planet is sort of this, what I've learned is this iconic Australian brand, lighting brand. And one of the Planet lamps, I think it was this one, was my husband's lamp, his desk lamp as a child that his parents passed on to us when we moved in. And I was lucky enough to find another one on Facebook Marketplace that matched it, or mostly matched it, a few years later. So now we use them as bedside lamps. So for the wall color, we wanted to bring in the tones from the painting. This is a wall color that's called Chinchilla Chenille by Dulux Paints, and it's one of my favorite wall colors, but also one of my favorite names of wall colors, Chinchilla Chenille. And it's sort of this muted beigey pink, with pink undertones, and creates a really, a really zen-like atmosphere. And on the ceiling, we did a green called Paris Creek. And what I love about that is that it connects to the ensuite. So the ensuite bathroom is drenched in green, and that continues here to the ceiling. So a big part of the brief to our architects was to maximize storage in the space, and they delivered. So we have custom joinery in each of the bedrooms in the front of the house, which provides excellent storage for our family. It's funny, when we left the smaller apartment and moved in here, I was like, oh my gosh, we have so much storage, and already it feels like we need more. So I guess that's life with kids. But we did I think it's called a lime wash or a French wash from Porter's Paint on the exterior, which just provides a lot of dimension and depth and looks, yeah, really lovely. We're here in the master ensuite bathroom. One of the many clever things that my architects did was divide one bathroom into two. So when we moved in, this whole area was a combined bathroom and laundry area, and they separated it into two bathrooms. So we have a small ensuite and a small guest bathroom as well. And while the spaces are compact, what they sort of lack in space, they make up for in sort of design impact. So we've drenched both of these spaces in a color. I think bathrooms are a really great place to experiment with color and to go a bit bolder. Here in this space, you can see that we went for a very deep green tile, which is carried all around the bathroom and onto the floor. And then we color matched the ceiling with the tile to create a really cozy feel. So I feel, very connected to nature when I'm in here. We've got the natural stone as well on the bench top up here, as well as timber, which makes it feel, really earthy and cozy. Most of the art that we have in the home is from Australian or New Zealand artists, but we do have a few really special pieces from American artists, this being one of them. This is a painting by my good friend Heather Bird Harris. She is a New Orleans and Atlanta based artist, and she uses natural pigments to create these abstract pieces. Nowadays, she's working on a much bigger scale, so sort of think 2 or 3 meter paintings. Now, one of these days, I'll have a wall that can accommodate one of her big, beautiful pieces, but for now, this little one has found a perfect place in the green bathroom. My favorite part of our home is where we are right now, which is the combined living, dining, and kitchen area. And this has really become the hub of our family life. It's where we spend almost all of our time together. So it's just such a beautiful experience to come out here in the morning as the light is coming in, have your coffee out in the garden, and then as the boys wake up, the space transforms, really into their play space. So the coffee table becomes the parking lot for my son's car toys, and we spend a good chunk of our days in here. We're cooking lunches and dinners and spending time as a family. So I'm just really grateful for this space and what it's become for our family, and that I was able to infuse my personal style and my design ethos into the space, and we get to look at all of the pretty things all day long. We are here in my son Theodore's nursery. I love this space and I am cherishing it because now that we have 2 little ones, I think we're going to be combining rooms and possibly transitioning them to the front room. So enjoying the space while it lasts. And I designed it to feel very cheerful. And like a lot of the rooms in the home, I started with a piece of art to inform the color scheme and the approach to design. So this is a piece by an Indigenous artist. Her name is Elizabeth Ingwaware Bonnie, and she is based in the Northern Territory. And I just fell in love with the colors and the texture in this piece. And you can see that there are yellows and there are pinks and oranges, and I really tried to draw those colors out and bring them into the surrounding room. So we have on the wall a deluxe color called Solar Half, which really just is this beautiful, buttery, scrumptious color that I never tire of looking at. We've also brought in the yellow into these curtains up here. So I love a stripe, as you know, from the chairs up front, and the nursery is no exception. It needs to get a stripe. So those add just sort of a playful and fun graphic element. So underfoot we have a Tibetan tiger, or a play on a Tibetan tiger rug. So obviously a little bit more sort of cartoony in style with the pinks, but just brings another graphic element. I'm actually a huge sucker for animal print, and it appears all the time in my wardrobe, but I realized that this is the only place in the house that you'll find a animal print, which is probably something that I need to remedy. I think maybe the couch is due for a reupholster soon, so there might be a possibility there, but love a tiger print and the graphic element that it brings in. Over here we have another piece of art that means quite a lot. So I spent most of my 20s in New Orleans, Louisiana, and obviously a big part of the culture of that city is around Mardi Gras. So on Lundi Gras, which is the day before Mardi Gras, there is a red beans and rice parade where everybody dresses up in costume that is made of red beans and rice, and it's a really fun moment and a really sort of community-oriented parade. This poster came from a sub-crew of the red beans and rice parade, which was called, the Dead Bean Parade. And obviously it works with the colors. My friend Fiona sent that to me from overseas. So over here we've got the original fireplaces, which have been modernized with a bit of a paint, and also we've added new tile down below here just to give it a bit of a modern look. And obviously it's not in use because right now it's home to my son's stuffed animals on his bike, but it would be lovely if we could use them. And over here is my son's cot. This is a piece by a Sydney artist. Her name is Claudia Brand. She's actually a good friend, a good family friend. And this origami crane mobile was an Etsy purchase, actually. But I love how when you get it from the right angle, it looks like the cranes are sort of flying in the sky. And a Japanese poster of the Great Wave, but in a pink to match the rest of the scheme. And over here we have a cork board that houses my son's creations and some of his mementos. So just some family photos, as well as some of his artworks from school. He's quite the artist. He brings home 2 or 3 pieces a day, so we don't have space for all of them, but we select a few to swap in and out here on his board. We are in the reading corner, the reading nook for my son's nursery. And I'll start over here with this sconce, which is from a UK brand called What the Mood, just a cute and little playful, but also very functional reading light. We end his day every night in here with 3 or 4 books, or sometimes 5 or 6 if he's lucky. And this chair has been, it's one of my favorites because it's just so cozy, and having a bit of an ottoman that we can all really just cozy up on. And now that there's 2 little ones, my 3-month-old is also joining us for reading at night, and it accommodates all of us, which is great. Books over here, books up here. On the shelves we have books in other places, so many books. He's a book lover, and obviously a cute little confetti chair that he sometimes has now taken to sort of pulling up beside the reading chair as if I'm reading him a book in school. So that's how he's liking to read his nighttime books these days. Here we are in the guest bedroom. And we are so lucky that this room gets such a lot of use. So my parents live in the US, and they come over to visit at least a couple of times a year, sometimes more. And my partner Alex's parents are in regional Victoria, about 4 hours away. So they come almost weekly to spend time with us and the boys. And we're lucky to be able to accommodate them when they come and join. And there's a few elements in this room that I really love. I'll start over here with this gallery wall. The gallery wall is mostly family portraits that have been collected over the years, some from my side of the family and some from my partner Alex's. So family is obviously really important to both of us, and it was important to me that I found a space in the house that could honor that and display that. So a few important ones to call out. Up at the top, we have a sketch of Alex and I on our wedding day, also by Claudia Brand, who was the artist that did the clouds in Theo's nursery. And obviously it's such a special day for us, and was really grateful to have it captured by Claude. With the pencil drawing. We have my grandmother here, a portrait of her. She's still with us back in Pennsylvania, my city. And my Sidi and Jaddi on their wedding day. I also have my paternal Graham here and my grandpa on their wedding day. And then there's more wedding photos from Alex's side of the family. This was my great-great-grandfather on his wedding day. And this, as you can see, is not a family portrait. This is a painting of yours truly. This is done by another Australian artist. Her name is Sean Williams, and she is a dear friend of ours. And her husband, Harry, actually officiated our wedding. And Sean gifted this to Alex and I on the night before our wedding. And I love it. And I think it fits perfectly in with the vibe of the rest of the gallery wall. Both my husband and I occasionally work from home. And so we needed a space that would allow us to do that, but we didn't have we don't have a separate room. We don't have space for a separate room. So it was important that we find a really compact desk, and that we're, as always, sort of maximizing vertical storage. So this is I think it's steel, some sort of metal. And then I carried that up through the shelves in a similar material, and we were able to accommodate, I think, 70% of our book collection over here. And these shelves have also become places for little trinkets from our travels and from our son. So this is his rock collection. My father-in-law is a budding ceramicist, and this is a little espresso cup from him. And we have a few paper objects from South Africa that act as storage. Yeah, it works for us. I will take you over now to this piece. This piece is by a woman named Stacy Rees, and it is actually the first piece that my husband and I bought together. We bought it in 2019 when we were in this heritage apartment in Carlton, which is about a 20-minute drive from here. And the apartment was a heritage listed home. It actually was the former Bureau of Meteorology way back in the early 1900s. And it had these massive 3 to 4 meter ceilings, and we really needed a piece that was quite substantial to anchor the living room. So we came across Stacy's work. She was represented at the time by Modern Times, and this collection was a collection of 20 pieces of women in various positions. And this one's called Stone on Stone, and I absolutely love it for its simplicity and also for its color scheme. I was so happy when we brought her here and she fit right above the mantle. I was worried she wasn't going to fit, but she fits almost perfectly. And you can see her from the street, so it's one of the first things when you're walking up to the house. And we love her. We also used the painting to inform the color scheme for the rest of the room. So you'll see we have this earthy, earthy yellow mustard, and we took a deeper tone and put that onto the ceiling. I think painting a ceiling, especially in a home like this that has architectural features like the molding, really highlights that, and is quite an interesting thing to do. I think some people are a little reluctant to paint their ceiling, but I think it can be very high impact. And we also took some of the tones from the other parts of the background of the painting and brought those onto the wall. So this is Dulux color called Tavern, and it really has the effect of sort of, bringing the room in. It's quite an expansive space, but the colors that we've chosen, I think, sort of create some intimacy. And we have this painting to thank for that color scheme. Over here we have a thrifted piece of art, also a portrait. There is a large intersection of art that my husband and I like, which I'm really grateful for, that we have similar taste. I do gravitate more towards portraits than he does, and he often indulges me in that, which I'm grateful for. But what I love about portraits is how they can sort of take on a different life when they're on the walls, and how they can be in conversation with other portraits. So this one looks, the figure in this one sort of looks like she could almost be a sister to the Stacey Rees painting. So she's in a similar shape, has a similar body type, a long neck, and she's in a similar position as well, sort of crouching and leaning forward, but she's facing in the opposite direction of the other painting. So I sort of like to imagine that they might be sisters and they're feuding over something trivial, but that they've been holding on to for a long time. So this is our guest bed. We have a cane backboard or headboard and vintage cane side tables. So I wanted to make sure that when we were designing the space, it felt earthy and grounded. So trying to stick with natural materials. We have a sheepskin wool rug underfoot, and then brought in these wooden elements to ground the space. And above us, we have a rice paper pendant. I am very loyal to Japanese style lanterns. I use them in many of my projects, and my own home is no exception. So we have an Akari one in the master bedroom. This one is from the company Hay, and I am of the belief that you cannot have a Japanese rice paper pendant that is too large. So we went with the largest version that we could get from Hay, and she adds such a lovely ethereal quality to the space, and also is sculptural in her own right. And I love that lighting can also act as a piece of art, and try to lean into using lighting as art in all of my projects. I think what makes a house a home is that it reflects the stories of the people who live in it. And a good home, I feel, also has space to grow. As you evolve, your home should evolve with you. So a good home is never sort of done.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Rachel Donoff. Welcome to my home here in Melbourne, Australia.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
Hi, my name is Rachel Donoff. I'm a furniture designer, and welcome to my home here in Melbourne, Australia. I bought this home on a whim about 11 or 12 years ago. We were not actively looking, but I was outside and going through junk mail and saw a real estate catalogue, and would never have normally flicked through it, but I was just, for whatever reason, was just hanging around there, and I looked through it and I saw this house, and the day of the auction was the day before, so I had just missed the auction, but I just thought it was such a charming, beautiful little cottage. And so I drove past to have a look and there was no sold sticker. So I think it was a Sunday and I called the agent and I said, there's no sold sticker, I know it's Sunday, but I really love this house, can you take me through it? And he responded within like 10 minutes and I walked through it that afternoon. It was just, had passed in the day before, so it was just really good luck. I walked through the house and my first impression, even though it was in original condition, it was an old heritage home in original condition with sort of really colourful carpet and wallpaper and an outdoor toilet. But my first thought was it just had such a beautiful energy. It felt and it smelt like a holiday home. Even the garden, just the whole space, even in its original condition, it just had a beautiful feeling and it really pulled me into it. Put an offer in that afternoon and we bought it within 24 hours. So it was a very quick, spontaneous, I feel like it was just meant to be. This home is 120 years old. It is a Edwardian style home. So it's got double fronted with the bay windows, it's weatherboard, it's got the beautiful terracotta roof, it's got a lot of beautiful features, it's got beautiful symmetry externally, and it's a home that is heritage protected, which means that the local government here in Melbourne has put restrictions around developing it to preserve its history. And so when we wanted to move in and bring it up to date, we needed to be very sensitive to the heritage overlays and to the historical restrictions around retaining the facade and the original character of the home. So even to the extent that when we needed to replace some of the weatherboards at the front, we had to make sure that the profile was exactly the same as original. The tiling, we're limited to only using terracotta tiles. Even with the colours to paint the house or the front fence, we needed to get explicit permission from the council to be able to do that. So for me, it was a real privilege to be able to own a piece of history and to be able to respectfully restore it and love it as much as it has been loved for the last 100+ years. Welcome to the entryway of my home. I want to point out this tapestry, which actually is another piece that I sourced and could not let go of. So it was a piece that I sourced to sell, and as soon as it arrived, I unwrapped it and I opened it. It came from France. It's like a 450-year-old tapestry that was in a beautiful chapel 400 years ago in the countryside of France. And when I opened it and saw the amazing colours and intricacy, I just thought, this is one of a kind. I'm not selling this. I've collected and seen a lot of tapestries in my life, and to get the beautiful colour that this one has, the reds and the blues and the greens, it's rare. And I just felt that I would miss it forever if I sold it. Even though I had a lot of people who wanted to buy it, I just couldn't do it. And so I had it, it was kind of falling apart a little bit because of its age. And so we had it backed and really preserved, expertly preserved by someone local. So I really wanted to make sure that it's got another 400 years in it. And I think that when you're looking at really old pieces, you need to care about them a lot. And often you need to be thinking about how to preserve them so that they last another 400 years, because it clearly, when it arrived, it was beautiful, but it had holes in it. It was quite frayed, and a lot of that adds to the charm and the beauty of it. But I think if it's left as is without being further preserved, it can just continue to deteriorate. So it was very important to me to be able to take really good care of it and to have it backed and have it professionally restored, so that we still have the charm of it and the age of it, but it is now protected in terms of not decaying further, so that it can hopefully be passed down for generations through my family. The front part of the house is original. This is the original part of the house. The house was a lot shorter and smaller than what it is today when we first bought it. And a lot of the regulation, the government regulation around purchasing and restoring an old house pertains to the external, but I really wanted to also preserve the internal of the house as well and retain some of that character. So even though the plaster wasn't in good condition and we had to redo a lot of the plaster work, we've still kind of kept the high ceilings and the cornices, and we've tried to recreate what was originally here, even though we've had to use new materials because the originals were so damaged. So we've put in the beautiful plaster arch, which was not here originally, but it is reminiscent of what was here originally. The arch that was here initially was quite, we weren't able to restore it, and so we were able to sort of bring in something that was like it to kind of create that feeling again. And I love that I love that there's the old part of the house and the new part of the house. And as you walk through, it becomes a little bit, you start to notice the new. And I wanted to really symbolize that. I mean, even the ceiling height is different from this section of the house to the next section of the house. We were limited in ceiling height with the back section because of the second story that we've put on. And so although I fought to the death to keep our ceilings really high, we've kept them as high as possible, and they're still quite high, but they're not as high as the original ceilings, which are above me here. And that's because we needed to be able to get the stairs up, and we just had to sort of compromise there. So that was one thing we had to compromise on. But a nice way to sort of break it up is with this arch, which is just a nice, a beautiful sort of feature that I love. Welcome to my living room. So many special pieces in this room that I absolutely adore. These are vintage Jean Purcell wall lights, which I purchased at auction a while ago. They were originally this like brassy color, which I didn't love. And so believe it or not, I actually had a car accident right before I bought these. And so my car was going in to be repaired, and my car color was this beautiful pewter gray. And I took the lights in, these vintage French one-off light sconces, and I asked the mechanic if he can spray the light sconces with the remaining leftover paint from my car, which he did. So you never believe, but this beautiful finish is actually a car finish, and I think they've come up really beautifully. So it's just one of those things that's quite sort of personal and my own kind of take on this gorgeous light. I think being creative and being resourceful in terms of making pieces your own is all part of the bigger story, and I'm quite proud of this little bit of resourcefulness. So those are the lights. This here is a sculpture, a sandstone sculpture. It's actually two pieces from two different artisans. So I bought this plinth here as a side table originally, and I bought the egg sculpture as a doorstop. And then as I was sort of putting the house together, I realized that they actually look really beautiful together. And if I layer one above the other, the material is so similar that it looks like a sculpture. So in honesty, it's actually it's two different pieces. And this is actually supposed to be a side table, but I figured as a whole, it makes a beautiful sculptural piece. And I get a lot of comments on this, and everyone can't believe that it's not actually supposed to be a sculpture, but here we are. We've turned it into a sculpture, which I love. So this chair here, it's our Cohen linen armchair. It's one of the first pieces in the collection and was very much designed for this space right here in this room. So there's something very personal about them. They were designed for me, which is how a lot of the pieces in my collection have come to be, is I've seen a space in my own home where I wanted a specific type of furniture piece that I couldn't find anywhere else, and so I've made it myself. It's got that sort of old world French sort of reference with the contrast piping and the monochromatic palette, but it's also got the beautiful linen and the feather insert, and it's amazingly comfortable. So I feel like it ticks all the boxes, and it's just my dream chair, and I love that I get to sit in it every single day. And they're also surprisingly really hardy. I mean, they're linen and they're light in colour, but they somehow always come up beautifully after a clean. And I've had them for about 4 years now, and they've stood the test of time. So you definitely can do white with little children and pets. That's 100%, is that I'm all for doing white, even when you've got kids and pets running around. The fire screen here is also a really special piece that I designed. It's got the gorgeous silhouette all through it, which is beautiful. It also comes in a room divider, but it's beautiful with like a light shining through it. It throws a gorgeous sort of reflection and shadow on the floor. And I feel like it's quite an artful piece. I think fireplaces are beautiful. From a practicality perspective, we need a screen in front of them, but also it's also an opportunity to add art into a home, and I'm all about adding art and adding beautiful pieces, drawing the eye, creating curiosity, creating talking points within a home, and I feel like this does exactly that. It's a talking point, it's a place that your eye lands on, it's an interesting piece, and I'm thrilled with it. This here is a little gorgeous clay sculpture that my 8-year-old son made in school. And he brought it home and he showed me, and I was blown away by its beauty. I know it's like a little piece of craft made by an 8-year-old child, but for me this is like something that I will have forever. I think it's magnificent. I love the colour, I love the texture, I love everything he's done with it. I love the little piece of fluffy wire around it, and I would pay good money for this. Like, this is a really special piece. So this is on the mantle and not going anywhere. This is actually a coffee table that I I found the base, I painted it myself, and then I sourced the viola top from a local stonemason. So it was very much a bit of DIY. This was done well before I started my brand, and it was just me on a budget trying to think, how can I create a beautiful viola coffee table without necessarily being able to go out and buy one. So it was very much a little moment of resourcefulness and trying to sort of create something really beautiful without necessarily having the means to be able to buy it from someone else. I needed to find a way to make it myself. So it's quite special to me. And even though I do have a lot of coffee tables, like beautiful coffee tables in my collection, I'm sticking with this one for now because it's just got a lot of meaning to me in terms of the story of how it came to be. I love to layer the coffee table with beautiful books, whether it's design books, books on art, old auction catalogues, sculptures that I've found. You know, that one there is a vintage piece. These here are some of the candles from my own collection with the beautiful marble top on them as well. So it's a real sort of mix. It's constantly changing and evolving, the coffee table, but it's definitely a bit of a space that sets the tone of the room, and I really want this space to feel like a place where we all get together, where we talk, where we read, where we laugh, where we share. And I think the coffee table, having some interesting books and interesting sort of things to look at, definitely encourages that dynamic in this space, which is what this space has been designed for. Our north side of our home is that way, and while we didn't have any windows facing the north side, I really wanted to bring that light element into the home. And so together with the architect, we had the idea to create this light well, and so to bring in the light through the roof, coming all the way down. It's such a special architectural detail for me. I feel like this wall and this side of the room is one of my favorite elements of the design of the home in the walls. We've put a beautiful Anna Charlesworth plaster sconce over here, so that as the day goes by and the sun drops, the shadow kind of comes down this wall, and then when we have the wall light on, it just has a beautiful sort of, it creates a beautiful shadow, and that was very intentionally thought out in terms of the placement of this lamp right beneath that light well. And it's just a really nice sort of way to sort of bring light in, get the northerly light into the space, and create that you know, the roof height difference, which I think just adds another element in terms of just interest and in terms of feel of the room and the space. And this is our dining space here. This room was built for this table right here. This table is a piece that I hope will go from generation to generation in my family. It's extremely special to me. It's a solid oak Danish vintage table. I'm not sure if you can see, but the legs have the most beautiful sculptural shapes through them, and it's just a real conversation piece, and it's sculpturally beautiful. It's very much one of a kind, and it is possibly my favorite thing in this house is this dining table. So I bought this dining table at auction well before we had this home, and I stored it at my parents' place in their garage, even though everyone thought I was mad because I did not have anywhere to put it. And I knew one day I would find a space for it because I always had a vision of being able to like have this dining table in my home. And so when we renovated this space, the brief to the architect was literally, make sure this dining table fits. And so we actually built this space, and it sort of pops out from the rest of the house. It's built for this table. So it's quite special to me. The light above is an Anna Charlesworth plaster light. And I think that it's got a beautiful glow when the lights are on. I really wanted to focus on the lighting around the dining table, being very conversational, being very mood driven as opposed to overhead lights. So there's no overhead lights. It's just the lowered pendant over the table, and then there's some wall lights as well. So for me, lighting is a really big part of creating a room and creating a mood, and it was very intentional for me what materials we use for lighting and where we place them when designing this space. So we've got beautiful low hanging pendant. I've got this divine Murano vase, which is maybe, I want to say 60 years old. It's a beautiful old vase. It does have a crack in it, which unfortunately happens when things are 60 years old. But I just put another vase inside it and fill the inside vase with water in order to use it for florals and for, for arrangements. So we found a way around it, even though it does have a crack, but I refuse to throw it out because I think that it's just beautiful. And the crack just adds to its, the imperfection, it just adds to its charm. So I'm not bothered by that at all. These dining chairs are the Matisse dining chair from my collection. They've got a beautiful vintage feel to it, which is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to create a chair that had all the charm of vintage and all the story of a vintage piece. It's got the beautiful turned timber leg. It's got the rush weave, the ladder back rush weave, and it's a really solid, beautiful timber chair. And I know it's difficult to find often a set of chairs. When you're looking at vintage chairs, they've got this beautiful charm, they've got this beautiful patina, but often you can only find 3 or 4 if you're lucky, sometimes only 2. And so I really wanted to create a vintage-esque chair that was artful, that was sculptural, that had a beautiful shape to it, that was a beautiful quality, so that people can have a set of 6, a set of 10 around their table and be able to get a matching set. So these chairs are the chairs that I have paired with my table. They're really special to me, and they're a beautiful quality. They've got lots of beautiful detail around them. I feel like they're also a real conversation piece. And yeah, they're pretty nice. The floor is a seagrass rug, which comes actually in little squares, so you can have it made to whatever size you like. I love the vibe of it, even though it's not practical. It's definitely, we've been through a few. Since being in this space, only in 3 years, we've had to replace it a couple of times because it does kind of get a bit scraggly. And I'm often told it's not made for dining, it's not made for high use areas, but for me, I would rather live with something really beautiful, even if I do, even if it doesn't have that longevity like these rugs. I feel like it's not, I can replace it every couple of years, and at least I get to enjoy it while it's here. So I just said, I don't care. I want the rug under my table, even though it's not practical. I think it ties in really beautifully with the shapes of the table and with the chairs and with the whole setup. I just feel like it pulls the whole space together. So it's a decision that I definitely do not regret. So in terms of the doors and the windows that you see around the dining area, I did insist when we were building that we go with steel frame doors. We had to have them custom made by metal workers here in Victoria. We had to seek someone out who was quite a distance away. It was a whole story in terms of getting them done. But I actually designed the doors and the windows. I designed the profile. I wanted it to be very open, but I also wanted to bring that old world feel in. Even though this part of the house is new and is an extension of the original part of the house, it was very important to me to maintain that charm and to not be too modern in terms of, I didn't want to have that stark contrast. I wanted to be respectful of the heritage and the older elements of the home. And so designing these doors was very much, I did a lot of research around doors from 100 or so years ago and the mullion and where they sat. And it was very much intentional, and I designed these doors myself. So I feel a little bit proud of them, and I'm definitely really, really happy that I went ahead with steel doors, because they've just got a beautiful solidness to them. Even opening and closing them, they just have this nice sort of quality feel. And I think that going with real materials, so going with the metal as opposed to going with like a plastic or inferior version of these doors, it just wouldn't have had the same feel. So I'm quite happy that I stuck with my guns. I've always been really drawn to architecture and to forms and shapes and sculpture, and I've got an eye for these things. I'm a creative person, and I've always been drawn to design and beautiful spaces, and particularly beautiful homes. And so when I had the chance to renovate my own home, it was I was ecstatic at the opportunity to finally be able to put my own stamp on a home and do things my way. And I very much leaned into that. Very much the spaces were created around the intention and my philosophy around family life, around home, and around how I want to live and how I want to raise my family as well. So here we are in my kitchen. This kitchen was really, really well thought out in terms of what I wanted this kitchen to achieve. I knew that it was going to be in the main open space where the dining and living rooms are, and so I wanted it to not steal the show. I actually wanted it to sort of fade into the background a little bit, but I did want it to still be aesthetically really soft and soothing. I think that was the vibe that I was thinking for the kitchen. So we've gone with no knobs, as you can see. All the cupboards and doors open up with a lever underneath instead of having knobs. I wanted to keep it extremely minimal. All of our doors and drawers have no handles and no knobs, and all of our appliances are integrated, which means that we have no appliances apart from the oven. We've got no appliances on show. So the fridge is fully concealed, the dishwasher's concealed, and I just love that really minimalistic, modern sort of aesthetic, or I shouldn't say modern, I feel like it's minimalistic, but there is still the classic, the shaker doors and the different profiling, and the limestone counters was another decision that I made in spite of being told that it's not practical and that stains show up and that it's not practical in a kitchen. I just said, I don't care, I love it, I'll keep it clean. And I have, so far. I've managed to keep them in good condition, but I definitely am someone who, I love what I love and I'll make it work. If I love a stone that is not practical, I'll still go with it and I'll just make it work because I want to love everything that's in my home, and I fell in love with this stone quite literally. I fell in love with the slab and I selected the slab and I was obsessed with it, and all of our colours in terms of the palettes of the cabinetry, both the lower and upper cabinetry, all revolve around this stone. So it was quite important to me to be able to use this stone in the kitchen. So the kitchen is a space that is often quite clean and the counters are empty as much as possible. I really wanted the other spaces in this room to sort of sing, and I wanted this room to kind of fade a little bit back, not to draw too much attention, but still to be a beautiful, calm, and also timeless space. I think going with like a lighter colour palette, going with natural stone, it's not going to date. I also think leaving knobs off also prevents that dating. I think that once you start putting knobs or hardware on doors, you're setting the clock in terms of dating, because those sorts of things come and go, whereas a clean sort of kitchen with not too much happening is a kitchen, I think, that will look beautiful for many, many years to come. So this is a lamp by an Australian artist that I purchased. I actually had her lamp in mind for this specific space. I just love its soft curves. I think it ties in beautifully with the lighting in the rest of the room. And I love the idea of being a little bit impractical and putting a lamp on a kitchen counter. I just find that every space is an opportunity for art. Every surface, every wall, every floor, there's always an opportunity for art. And I feel like this is a really artful kind of sculptural lamp that has never been switched on, but it sits there and it makes me happy. I think it's got a beautiful form to it, and I love the idea of bringing art into unexpected places, like in front of a fireplace, on a kitchen bench top. I'm all for doing what brings joy and then finding ways to have practicality around that. So for me it's form first and function after, but the function still happens. So we definitely achieve both, but for me it's definitely about form first in terms of designing my own space. When we moved in about 12 or 13 years ago, the initial plan was just to make it livable, so to bring it back to kind of update the electrical and the plumbing, to bring the toilet inside, because it wasn't livable when we first moved in. So the first renovation was quite intense, because we had to really go through all the walls and rewire and bring it all up to sort of contemporary living standards. But then about 3 years ago, we did a second renovation where we added a second story to have more bedrooms, because now we've got 4 children, so we needed the space for our growing family. And we also were able to extend out the living and dining areas in the kitchen so that it was able to house a growing, busy family. My style is very intentional. I would say that nothing is done by accident, and nothing is done because it was the easy option. I would say that every single piece that I bring into my home is very much treasured and loved and has a real place in my heart. And in exactly the same way, when I renovated this home, I wouldn't compromise on, I wanted steel frame doors, and although there's a million other options that are, cheaper or better for 100 reasons, I really wanted that rustic, beautiful feel of the steel frame door, and I insisted and I got it. It's the same with the fireplace behind me. We were really encouraged by the builder to go with a gas fireplace for ease, for practicality, and I said, no, I want a real fireplace. I want that smell of a fireplace. When it's lit, I want that feeling, that ambience. So for me, I think that ties into my philosophy around design, and it very much speaks through my home as well, is nothing is done in halves. I really want every single moment in the house, every area, every aspect, every element, and the same goes in the pieces that I design and create, to feel very intentional and to come from a place of heart and of passion and of intention. let me take you to the master bedroom. This here is the master bedroom. This is the first room you see when you walk into the house, and it's a room that I always want to be able to have the door open to. It's a room that I want to show off. It's a room that is really special to me because it is where I relax at the end of the day. It's my safe space. It is, it's all about feeling here, and that's why that explains the ways that I've designed it. So let me just talk you through a few of the elements. We've got the beautiful original fireplace, which is 100 and so years old. The house came with these beautiful original fireplaces, which we've had to close up because we had some issues with all sorts of lovely animals climbing down the chimney, but it's still here aesthetically, although it doesn't work, but I still love the look and feel of it. This is a bust that a vintage bust that I collected, I don't even remember when, a long time ago, and I love it. This is an Italian crystal little trinket bowl that holds sort of some jewelry and clips and bits and pieces. And then this here is the bedroom furniture. So we've got wall lighting as well, which is really important to me. And at the end of the day, I'll always sort of flick the lights on and close the blinds, and that sort of signals to everyone in the house and to me that it's like wind down time. So I'm very much about lighting, communicating to us about the intention behind a space. So as soon as it sort of starts getting dark in the evening, I'll put these lights on and I'll turn off any overheads so the room just feels really beautifully lit, very calm, serene, and this is the space that I come to rest. So we've got the beautiful wall lights, and then we've got the Remy side table and bed, which is from my own collection, with a gorgeous European bedspread over the top. So the shapes of this bed head and side table, I feel like they mirror that calmness, and the materials are very sort of soothing, and they're also very artful and quite beautiful. They've got the deep drawers for storage, and they're a good sort of size for all the things that you want to keep on top of your bedside table or put inside your bedside table. So it's just, for me, this space is very much a calming, soft space that signals end of the day, time to unwind, whether it's a book or a cup of tea or quality time, whatever it is. For me, it's really about this space just being a place to exhale and rest after a busy day. So this vase is something I found on Facebook Marketplace, would you believe, of all places. So I was just searching one day and I found this beautiful old vase. I think that it might be someone's craft project potentially. It is signed with a name at the bottom, but I think it was someone's craft project potentially, which adds to its charm. I absolutely love it. It's a really special piece, either with or without flowers. I feel like it's got beautiful patina. It's got the beautiful sort of glossy green and then the undertones of brown. I just think it's a beautiful piece that is really special to me, and that I love to have some fresh flowers bedside, just to sort of, you know, keep the room fresh and just bring joy into this space. I started my business in 2020. It looked a little bit different to what it looks like today. I was sourcing vintage and antique pieces and selling them on Instagram. And this is one of the first pieces that I sourced. It actually came in a set of a coffee table and a side table and a console. And I couldn't let go of it. I did sell the other pieces, but this one here, I just thought I need to hold on to it because it is so unique and special. And there aren't many that I held on to, but there are a couple of pieces from my initial early days of my business, pieces that I sourced that I just couldn't bear to sell. And this is one of them, this beautiful bench. It actually was a console, and we had the legs cut down to function as a bench. So it has been, again, the resourcefulness, that kind of, you know, creative mind of how I can turn it into a piece that will be functional in my home. And for me, it was a bench, and so we had the legs cut down slightly so it functions as a bench, but it's just really a beautiful sculptural piece. And it also tells a story in terms of where it all began for me, what I did before I started my bigger business. And it's just, you know, it's got that symbolism to me of that real kind of, that creativity and that eye for detail. That is what inspired it all, and that it's what continues to inspire what I do today as well. I love my home with such a passion. I don't know if other people understand that feeling, but I wish it on everyone, because it is the most incredible thing to be able to walk into your home at the end of the day, or when you wake up in the morning, to walk down your hallway and just feel just such a beautiful light energy of being in a space that you love with every part of your being. I never ever want to leave this home. I will be here till the day I die. This home has such a special place in my heart. I don't know if I could pick a specific room or space or area because it's not even about the physicality of it. I honestly think that it's a feeling. This house just feels very much like my space. It feels very me, it feels very safe, and it feels like the best version of me. I've pulled in pieces of furniture, many from my own collection that I've designed for this home, which have turned into pieces that now are in my collection that make me feel incredibly happy and make me feel that I am living in a space that is deserving of the best version of myself. I think that my home is it's where my heart is in the truest sense of the word. Coming home is always a treat. I don't ever take for granted living in this beautiful space. I feel so lucky and happy, and that I have stuck with the design decisions that I did, and that I've insisted on the design decisions that I did, because this house just makes me, it's got a beautiful flow to it, it's got a beautiful energy to it, and it's a space that makes me feel really, really happy, genuinely. This here is my daughter's room. This space is such a labor of love and has so much meaning behind it. I almost feel like I'll get emotional while I talk about it. Without going into too much detail, there was a lot of personal fertility pain before having my daughter. And when I fell pregnant with her, it was just the most incredible blessing. And I also have 3 boys before her as well. So her being a girl was also such an enormous treat for me to have a little girl of my own. It was a lifelong dream. I'm sure many people can relate and understand. And so having the chance to decorate her room it just felt like such a gift. And this space here, so much love has been poured into every single choice. Every single material, every single fabric, every single element has just been such a labor of love. I can talk through all the different pieces. I mean, the bed head, we sort of have built this nook under the staircase with her bed head, which was a custom bed head that I designed and had made with this gorgeous fabric on it. And this is a vintage French bedspread that I sourced for her. And even the valance was custom made. So I've really kind of played with reds and pinks and clashing and contrasting shapes and prints. We've got florals, we've got stripes, we've really got it all kind of happening. And I just love that this room has a real whimsical, creative, it just feels like a space that you could just go wild in your imagination. It's a space for dreaming. Often I actually come in here and I sit in here during the day when she's not home, and it's just a place that makes me feel like anything is possible. Not only because of the way that just the whimsy and the wallpaper and the play on materials and how this room is just such a magical space, but also because of the journey that I went on to get to the point where I can design this room for my girl. It feels very symbolic to me of anything is possible, of never give up, and that good things will happen, and that good things will happen, you know, after the pain or after the journey that you've been on. So for me, this room feels extremely symbolic. It's a real happy place for me. This light was imported from France. This beaded globe, this beaded piece that goes around the globe. Every single detail has really been considered. Every single thing that I pulled into this space was something that I loved. This mirror here is a vintage mirror that is like one of my favorite things ever. The doll's house was the starting point in terms of when I found out I was pregnant. I straight away started sort of thinking about what I want for my daughter and how I want her to live and how I want her to feel. And I know for myself as a child, I loved dolls' houses, and I loved that imagining, and I loved decorating dolls' houses, and I loved that creativity and that endless possibility of being able to build your own family within a doll's house and story. And I think that the doll's house was definitely the starting point. And then that whimsy and that imagination and that creativity, it all kind of stemmed from that. I sort of thought, let's just go for it with this room, and let's just, you know, create a real sort of piece of just magnificent sort of beauty and a place that feels really optimistic and like opportunity. Like I want it to feel to her like she can do and be whatever she wants to be, and that the world is a happy place. And I want her to really feel that sort of optimism and happiness, spending time in this room, playing in this room, and sleeping in this room. To me, home means a space not only that you feel safe and that you can be your true self, but also a space where you feel inspired to be the best version of yourself. I think that by surrounding yourself with beauty in your home and living with beautiful pieces and in a beautiful environment, it lifts our spirits, and we leave that space out into the world feeling inspired and feeling good and feeling optimistic and feeling ambitious and feeling that we can achieve all of our potential. And I think that's the power of home, and definitely the feeling behind my brand as well, and the philosophy that I talk about all the time in terms of beautiful spaces. It's not just about aesthetics, it's very much about it affects the person. And I think that when we choose beautiful pieces, when we live in a beautiful space that we really love, it's the wind beneath our wings. It lifts us up, it turns us into the best versions of ourselves, and it encourages us to just go forward and just do everything you want to do in your life. It's very much to me, and it's a place, a platform that propels us into the best versions of ourselves. It's very inspiring to me. I think home to me is a place of inspiration, but also really deep comfort. Homeworthy, I have loved having you over here today, but I've got to get back to real life. See you.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.